The moment my classmates found out I was the mistaken heir, they were ecstatic. It wasn't that they wanted to mock me, it was that they'd finally seen what a poor person looked like. Finally, there was someone to claim the financial aid slot. My adoptive parents weren't the cruel caricatures from novels who would just throw me out. When the real heir started his snide remarks, no one paid him any mind. Instead, they turned to me and asked about my plans. Since your biological son has returned, it's only natural that I go find my own biological parents. I took a sip of hot tea. Mr. Montgomery always thought I was well-raised, decisive and efficient in my actions. But without a blood connection, no amount of grace or poise could compare to his own flesh and blood. Naturally, he wouldn't ask me to stay. The Montgomery family will give you $3 million. After that, you're on your own. I'll always be grateful for the upbringing you gave me. Mr. Montgomery gave a faint acknowledgement. Pack your things. I'll have old Mr. Lewis drive you. I set down my teacup and went upstairs. As I reached the turn of the staircase, Mason's voice came from behind me. Your real family is very poor. You won't have room for too much luggage and you can't use those luxury goods there. Don't make a bad first impression. I glanced at Mrs. Peterson, the waiting housekeeper. Everything I don't take with me, throw it all out. Mason froze on the spot. Throw everything away? Those were all limited edition designer brands, each piece worth a small fortune. How was that any different from burning money? I found his words amusing and went straight upstairs, grabbing a small backpack. I packed only my documents and phone, took nothing else, and left the Montgomery estate without a hint of reluctance. The car dropped me off at a rundown apartment complex in Queens. I looked up at the building number, confirmed it was correct, and knocked on the iron gate. Through the weary lines around her eyes, I knew instantly this was my biological mother. I offered a slight smile. I believe I'm your biological son. Mrs. Hayes froze at my words, and we stared at each other through the iron gate. I asked politely, "May I come in so we can talk?" Mrs. Hayes snapped back to reality and hurriedly opened the gate to welcome me. She poured me a glass of lukewarm water, her expression a little reserved. I took it, had a sip, and briefly explained the story of the switch at birth. Mason is the Montgomery's biological son, and I am yours. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes had suspected such a possibility, but seeing their refined and elegant biological son before them, they couldn't help but feel awkward and anxious. I had already reviewed the Hayes family's file, so I had a general understanding of the family members. Is there anything you'd like to ask me? This felt less like a family reunion and more like a business negotiation. Mrs. Hayes nervously asked what I wanted to eat. A gentle smile touched my lips. I don't have any particular cravings. Mrs. Hayes stood up and looked at Mr. Hayes. I'll go to the market then. You call Zoe and the others and tell them to come home right away. Hearing the iron gate clang outside, I got up and walked out of the room, coming face to face with my biological sisters. My smile held a touch of warmth. I'm Ethan. Hearing the deep, pleasant male voice, Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she met my gaze in disbelief. You don't mind how simple our home is? Sarah felt a little more at ease. I've already heard the story from Dad. This is our youngest sister, Lily. Mrs. Hayes returned from the market and went straight into the kitchen, seemingly avoiding conversation with me. I sat on the small sofa with Mr. Hayes, while the other three sat cross-legged on the floor, making the space feel incredibly cramped. Mr. Hayes let out a heavy sigh. You've seen the state of our home. All of us squeezed into this place that's less than 600 square feet. I'll rent an apartment for you outside and give you a monthly allowance. My gaze was calm as I looked at Mr. Hayes. Does that mean I'm not welcome to live at home? Mr. Hayes quickly explained, of course not. We're just worried you won't be used to it. Having received permission to stay, I seem to be in a good mood. If you don't mind, I'll be living at home from now on. Sarah suggested getting me a bigger bed, but I said, I'm fine sleeping on the sofa in the living room. I also planned to remodel the layout a bit. When Lily heard she would be getting a new desk, she jumped for joy. Mrs. Hayes came out of the kitchen carrying dishes. Dinner is ready. On the table was a delicious fish soup and some large boiled shrimp. Lily's eyes lit up. These were her favorite dishes, something she only got to eat on special holidays. Accustomed to gourmet delicacies, I didn't have a strong reaction to the food itself, but I could feel the effort the Hayes family had put into it. The awkward atmosphere began to fade. I had brought nothing but money, so I planned to buy a couple of outfits nearby. Lily volunteered to show me the way, so I took my little sister's hand and we headed out. I used to have clothes selected for me in VIP rooms, so picking them out myself was a new experience. I chose 3 or 4 casual outfits and also bought a pair of sneakers. On the way home, holding my little sister's hand, we passed a stall selling candied fruit skewers. I saw her secretly staring at the glass case, only to sensibly look away. I bought her a strawberry one. With the candied fruit in her hand, Lily's face was filled with happiness. She giggled and held it up to me. Brother, you have one too. I paused for a moment, then ruffled my little sister's hair. Big brother doesn't like sweets. Lily counted the strawberries on the skewer. There's one for me, one for our oldest sister, one for our second sister, and one for Mom and Dad. It's just enough for everyone. I chuckled and nodded. I led my sister back to the complex and saw Zoe from a distance, rummaging through a pile of junk and picking up a doll from a tattered cardboard box. Hearing my footsteps, Zoe frantically hid the doll behind her back. As I walked steadily toward her, my expression was placid. No need to hide it. I saw everything. Zoe lowered her gaze like a child caught doing something wrong and slowly brought the doll out. Mason used to love this doll. He had to hug it to sleep every night. I can't believe he didn't even want this anymore. This isn't the only thing he's abandoned, I said nonchalantly, my words piercing straight into Zoe's heart. Only when you feel the pain do you wake up. I sighed silently to myself. If you want it, just take it back. She tossed the doll back into the box and gave me a bitter smile. The small electric fan whirred creakily in the summer night, and the noisy chatter of neighbors drifted through the poorly soundproofed old window. Waking up in the middle of the night, I heard voices outside. It was Sarah whispering with our parents. Ethan probably isn't used to this bed. I heard him tossing and turning all last night. Let's buy him a good mattress. My scholarship money comes in next week. I'll use that to pay for it. The three of them spoke in extremely soft voices, but I heard every word clearly. By the time I had changed and come out, Sarah and Mr. Hayes had already left. Where did Dad and our oldest sister go? Mrs. Hayes handed me a glass of warm water. Your sister went back to college early. Your dad is out driving for Uber and dropped her off at the train station on the way. The morning train tickets are cheaper. Sarah was clearly trying to save money, a person who practiced extreme frugality, yet she was worried I wouldn't sleep well and decisively spent money to get me a soft mattress. A strange feeling stirred within me. Zoe had left early for her part-time job, Lily went to play with the neighborhood kids, and Mrs. Hayes went to a local workshop for odd jobs, leaving me alone in the house. I got up and opened the door to find Samantha arriving in a whirlwind, tools in tow. Mr. High and Mighty, I haven't even had breakfast. I showed her around the apartment and explained my requirements for the renovation. Samantha's face scrunched up, looking extremely troubled. Your old mattress alone cost more than $20,000, and now you want me to do the whole house for that much? I leaned against the doorframe with my arms crossed. If it weren't a challenge, I wouldn't have bothered you. After measuring the entire apartment, she had a rough layout in her mind. We returned to the living room and sat down, and Samantha closed her tablet. Are you really planning to stay here? Got tired of all the gourmet food. I smiled meaningfully. Do you know why the Hayes family went bankrupt back then? I heard some rumors. They said Sarah offended the Montgomery's youngest daughter's boyfriend while working a part-time job, so the daughter bankrupted the Hayes family. On the surface, that's the reason, but I know better than anyone that Sarah wasn't the one who caused the bankruptcy. Suddenly, there was a noise from outside, and Mr. Hayes rushed in. Weren't you out driving for Uber? I forgot my phone charger. His gaze fell on the person next to me, and Mr. Hayes found the young woman familiar. I took the opportunity to introduce her. This is my friend, Samantha. I asked her to come over and take a look at the apartment's layout. Mr. Hayes was completely stunned. He had heard of Samantha's name, a nationally renowned genius designer who had won numerous awards at a young age. Countless people offered fortunes for her designs, but Samantha wouldn't even give them the time of day. I won't disturb your work. I'll just grab a cable and go. Afraid of interrupting Samantha, Mr. Hayes grabbed the cable and left in a hurry. The two of us didn't chat any further. Samantha rushed back to work on the design plans. I grabbed my documents and materials and made a stop at the workshop on my way out. 7 or 8 women were busy inside, sticking labels and making small talk. I stood at the doorway and called inside, Mom, I'm heading out to run some errands. I won't be home for lunch. Mrs. Hayes smiled warmly. Remember to come home early tonight. After navigating the crowded intersection by the market, I saw a black McLaren parked on the side of the road. I pulled open the rear door and got in. The girl beside me had gentle eyes, and her gaze hadn't left me since she spotted me from a distance. You're so cruel, Mr. High and Mighty. Waiting until now to tell me something this big. I curved my lips into a slight smile. Weren't you abroad? What good would it have done to tell you sooner? Chloe let out a meaningful, oh, and said, so you're blaming me for not being here with you? Throwing a little tantrum, are we? I was both speechless and amused. Where did you learn to talk like a domineering CEO? You haven't contacted me in so long. I've had to console myself. Her fingertip poked my palm. Stop joking around. Can you get used to living with the Hayes family? It's definitely not easy to get used to. I barely slept last night. I leaned on Chloe's shoulder, her calm, low voice instantly relaxing me. My own voice grew softer. I had Samantha look at the layout. The renovation can start tomorrow. You're as efficient as ever. If you can't sleep well, come to my place tonight. When she didn't hear a response, she tilted her head down slightly to look at me and found I had already fallen fast asleep. She gave a helpless smile and instructed the driver to turn up the air conditioning. The scent of citrus filled the car, a fragrance that always made me feel relaxed. I slept on Chloe's shoulder for 2 hours, the car having long since parked outside the city records office. Chloe held my hand gently, waiting patiently for me to fully wake up before accompanying me inside. The process of transferring my legal residency was incredibly fast, with Chloe handling all the procedures. Once everything was successfully completed, my records were officially transferred to the Hayes family, my name permanently added to Mr. Hayes' household register. While I was cutting a steak in a high-end restaurant, my phone chimed with a notification. The Montgomerys had transferred the $3 million to my account. They think $3 million is enough to buy your silence? Chloe said, her head down as she cut her steak. Her tone, laced with a cold sneer, was ambiguous. I was never after their money anyway. By accepting this hush money, the Montgomerys don't have to worry about me spreading rumors, and I don't have to watch my back for them causing trouble. It's a clean break for everyone. Chloe drove me back, the car stopping at the same intersection by the market. She ruffled my hair, the tenderness in her eyes so thick you could drown in it. Only after I turned and walked into the market did Chloe instruct the driver to leave. When I got back to the old complex, Zoe was just getting home from her part-time job. I quickly washed my hands and sat at the dinner table. I'd never had fish with pickled greens like this before. The fish was tender, the greens were crisp, and the sour, spicy flavor was incredibly appetizing. It was the most I had eaten in 17 years. I even had 2 bowls of the broth. Mrs. Hayes' face bloomed into a wide smile. I'll learn to make some new dishes tomorrow. I called Northwood High today, Zoe said cautiously, afraid of misspeaking and upsetting me by mentioning Mason. If you're willing to transfer to Northwood, you can take the spot Mason left open. At the mention of transferring schools, Mrs. Hayes lowered her eyes and pressed her lips together. With our financial situation, we really can't afford to keep you at St. Ambrose. Your father and I have really failed you. I couldn't understand the Hayes family's way of thinking. They felt they had failed me because their finances were poor, because the house was too small, because they couldn't afford a private school. What was there to feel sorry about? You have to fight for what you want yourself. Relying on others, even your own family, will never get you anywhere. That was a lesson I learned with the Montgomerys. Thank you for looking into the transfer, Zoe, but I'll be staying at St. Ambrose. Before Mrs. Hayes could voice her worries, I already knew what she was thinking and raised a hand to stop her. At St. Ambrose, the student ranked first in the grade gets a full tuition waiver. You don't need to feel sorry for me. I'll earn what I need myself, because it's for my own benefit and shouldn't be your burden to bear. Hearing this, Mrs. Hayes' eyes suddenly reddened, shimmering with unshed tears. She fought them back and forced a proud, relieved smile. Zoe composed herself and her gentle smile returned. Since you have a way to stay at St. Ambrose, we'll definitely support your decision. St. Ambrose isn't far from Northwood High. I'll pick you up after school from now on. After dinner, Zoe went to the kitchen to wash the dishes, and I returned to my room to study. The next morning, after breakfast, the family headed out for work and school. I had called Chloe the night before to borrow a driver, and the car was already waiting at the intersection. After waving goodbye to Mrs. Hayes, the 3 of us siblings walked to the car and got in. Zoe saw the car we were about to get into, and I glanced at the Toyota logo. I had asked Chloe to send her cheapest car, but who would have thought it would be the latest model Alphard? To Chloe, it was indeed cheap, but compared to the Hayes' beat-up old sedan, this vehicle was absurdly luxurious. Is this your friend's car? Zoe found it incredible. Even after leaving the Montgomerys, you can still summon a car like this on demand. Are you still a Montgomery heir or not? My expression was calm and unfazed. I was merely exasperated by Chloe's arrangements. Lily sat quietly in the back seat by herself. Zoe, send me the address of your part-time job. Zoe finally snapped out of her daze. The driver started the car smoothly, and I picked up my phone to send Chloe an iMessage. Did you just buy this car? The drive to Northwood is over an hour, and I was worried you'd be uncomfortable sitting for that long. Besides, I can use it for naps sometimes. I looked at the screen and said no more, even though I knew she had bought it specifically for me. After dropping Zoe off at the restaurant, the car smoothly pulled back onto the road and headed directly for St. Ambrose Preparatory Academy. When I got home in the evening, dinner was just being served. The family sat around the table, chatting. The past few days had been surreal for the Hayes family. First, the internationally acclaimed designer Samantha had willingly come to renovate their home. They were getting to know the son of theirs anew, a young man who remained poised and unfazed even after returning to a life of poverty. My confidence never came from the Montgomerys. It stemmed from my own formidable abilities. After dinner, I took a shower and went to bed early. Only Mr. and Mrs. Hayes were left in the living room. Mrs. Hayes pressed her lips together in thought for a long time, as if she had finally made a decision. We can't keep underestimating Ethan's connections. We should also take this chance, while we're not yet past our prime, to strive for more. Mr. Hayes nodded in strong agreement. In the days since Ethan came back, I've been thinking a lot too. For this family to have a better life, we really can't just accept our current situation. Driving for Uber is just hard-earned cash. Ultimately, we need to start our own business. Mrs. Hayes sighed, her face clouded with worry. But it's not easy to do business these days. Mr. Hayes held his wife's shoulders tightly, his voice firm and powerful. We succeeded once, and we can definitely succeed a second time. For now, let's look into the market and do some preliminary research to be safe. The next morning, Mr. Hayes took Lily to school. St. Ambrose, the top-tier private school I attended, was just across the street from Northwood High where Zoe went, so we decided to take the bus to school together. The bus stop wasn't far from our complex, and there were plenty of empty seats when we boarded. Zoe swiped her card twice to pay our fares and guided me to an empty seat in the back. I stared at the transit card attached to her backpack zipper. It was the first time in my life I had ever ridden a public bus, and the first time I had seen a card like that. That seems pretty convenient. Where did you get your bus pass? I'd like to get one to hang on my bag too. Zoe was silent for a few seconds, then unclipped the pass and handed it to me. You have to go to a service center to get one. Just use mine for now. Then how will you ride the bus every day? You can use your phone to scan and pay now. Zoe smiled gently, seeing how curious I was about the card, and simply gave it to me to play with. I casually clipped it onto my own backpack. More people gradually boarded the bus. At this hour, besides students and commuters, there were many seniors heading to the morning market for grocery deals. As the bus filled up, the cabin became crowded. In the summer heat, the stagnant air carried an unpleasant sour smell of sweat. The old mason used to hate this smell. He was particularly averse to squeezing onto a crowded bus. Zoe glanced at her fair-skinned brother beside her. I was sitting quietly by the window, the breeze from outside ruffling my hair as my bright eyes curiously watched the scenery. Zoe thought that this overly mature younger brother actually had a very cute side to him. The bus driver drove aggressively, as they often do, and to avoid making students late, the trip to the school stop took only 40 minutes. The stop was right at the entrance of Northwood High, and Zoe insisted on walking me to my school's gate. With plenty of time, the two of us strolled slowly. Numerous luxury cars sped past us, and occasionally, someone would roll down a window to shout a greeting. Zoe understood immediately. It seemed her brother had good relationships at school. She had initially worried that once people knew his true identity, they would gang up and bully him, making him suffer. When we reached the imposing gates of St. Ambrose Preparatory Academy, Zoe felt a bit shy about going any further. I'll come pick you up after school this afternoon. Seeing Zoe's slight awkwardness, I smiled and nodded in agreement. A tall figure came running over, and I was knocked slightly off balance by an enthusiastic hug. Leo held my shoulders tightly, but his eyes were fixed on my sister beside me. I couldn't help but give a soft cough to remind him. Leo paused for a second before realizing who she was, recognizing her as the second daughter of the Hayes family. He immediately stood up straight and straightened his clothes. I'm Ethan's classmate, Leo, and also his current personal bodyguard. I tilted my head in confusion. Since when did you add bodyguard to your job description? Leo leaned in and whispered in my ear. It was a special request from Miss Lockwood. She's worried you'll get bullied now that your mistaken heir status is out. After speaking, he stood straight again, slung an arm around my shoulder, and grinned at Zoe, assuring her, Don't you worry, sis. I'm a Taekwondo black belt. No one will dare touch a single hair on Ethan's head. Zoe looked at the cheerful, sunny boy in front of her and gave a warm, kind smile. Well then, thank you for looking after Ethan. Leo felt like spring had bloomed, and he quickly blushed and waved his hands. You should get back to school for your class, sis. As he watched Zoe's figure retreat into the distance, Leo was still completely smitten. Does your sister have a boyfriend? Would she mind if I became your brother-in-law? I sighed helplessly. Have you forgotten you have a fiancé? You want my sister to be the other woman. At these words, Leo threw his head back and let out a dramatic howl. I glanced at the designer watch on my wrist. The bell rings in 15 minutes. I have no intention of being late with you. I quickened my pace towards the classroom, and Leo hurried to catch up. I heard the Hayes family went bankrupt and are in a lot of debt, and now you're living in some rundown apartment building. Can you even get used to a place like that? How about I give you that small villa of mine, and I'll even throw in a private driver and a maid. If I were really going to move, it wouldn't be your turn to step up. Leo was not happy to hear that. Miss Lockwood can give you things, but I can't. I'm your ride-or-die brother. He clung to my arm tightly. I was both exasperated and amused. When did this group develop a charity fetish? They were always offering luxury cars and villas, complete with drivers and maids, making it seem like I was living in utter misery after leaving the Montgomerys. Amidst the idle chatter, we arrived at the classroom door. The moment we stepped inside, the previously noisy room fell silent. Everyone stared at me, their faces frozen in a daze. Did I get disfigured or something? You all look like you've seen a ghost. Hearing my familiar teasing, everyone breathed a sigh of relief and burst into laughter. What plastic surgeon would dare touch your face? That rumor couldn't be true, could it? It seems you all know already. I walked back to my seat with a calm demeanor and sat down. When Maya saw me, she quickly shifted her chair closer and leaned in to whisper, News travels fast in our circle. I have a vacant apartment under my name. It's got to be better than where you're staying now, right? You can use it for the time being. Before I could refuse, Leo slapped her arm away. He wouldn't even take my villa. Maya pouted. She was no match for this ridiculously energetic guy. The group was joking around so loudly that they didn't even notice when the homeroom teacher, Ms. Walters, walked in. What state secrets are you all discussing so enthusiastically? This is the loudest class on the entire floor. Seeing the teacher's displeased expression, everyone quickly returned to their seats and fell silent, not daring to make a sound. St. Ambrose was a top-tier private academy, and its students were the children of wealthy families, but they were no different from ordinary students in their fear of strict teachers and the threat of disciplinary action. Outsiders assumed that elite schools were just for coasting by, a place for daily displays of wealth and competition. The reality was that their academic load was even heavier. In addition to standard college entrance exam subjects, they also had to study business management, equestrianism, and more. The founder of St. Ambrose was from the highest echelons of society and had extremely strict rules regarding student conduct. Any act of disrespect towards a teacher would result in severe punishment, not just for the student, but with potential repercussions for their family's business as well. It's the first day of school, so I'll let it slide. This is your final year, so all of you better be smart about it. Don't cause any trouble. Do you hear me? The students shouted in unison. Yes, we hear you. This semester, we have a new transfer student joining our class. Everyone, please welcome Mason Montgomery. The expressions on everyone's faces turned strange as their gazes fell in unison upon the front of the room. Leo shot me a look, but I just smiled nonchalantly, my unreadable expression making it seem like I was just there to watch the show. After a few days of intensive etiquette training, Mason had finally acquired some of the airs of a young master. He flashed what he believed to be a perfect smile and gave a slow, deliberate self-introduction. I'm Mason. Due to an accident in my childhood, I was switched at birth. Now, I've finally been reunited with my biological parents, and I hope to get along well with everyone in the coming year. Mason was dressed in a custom-tailored casual suit, projecting an image of gentle refinement. Back at his old school, Northwood High, he might have been admired for his status as a Montgomery heir. Unfortunately, this was St. Ambrose, a place filled with hidden talents and powerful figures, and his petty schemes were completely transparent. After he finished speaking, the classroom was met with dead silence. Maya, annoyed by his pretentious act, casually remarked with a sneer, "The real Montgomery heir is certainly something else. The moment he's back with his family, he kicks Ethan out onto the street." Mason's eyes flickered at her words, and he habitually slipped into his innocent victim persona. He lowered his gaze as if deeply troubled. I thought that after being raised by my parents for 17 years, he wouldn't want to leave them. I never expected him to demand $3 million from Dad and just walk away without a second glance. I really don't understand how my brother could be so heartless. How could you be so heartless? A furious shout echoed through the quiet classroom. Mason turned in alarm to see Leo, his eyes blazing with anger, and me, sitting beside him with a composed smile. The homeroom teacher, Ms. Walters, frowned in displeasure, glaring at Leo who had just slammed his hand on the desk and stood up. Sit down right now. Mason suppressed a slight smirk, fidgeting with the hem of his shirt as if he had been gravely wronged. My biological family is struggling financially. The change in lifestyle must be a huge shock for my brother, so it's only natural for him to resent me. Ms. Walters didn't speak up for Mason. This was a school with strict discipline, and it was her responsibility to manage student conduct. The students of St. Ambrose were destined to be leaders in their fields, and the teachers here were hardly ordinary. Ms. Walters saw right through Mason's clumsy act but couldn't be bothered to expose it in front of everyone. Let me remind you, St. Ambrose is not a place for games. Also, remember to wear your school uniform to class tomorrow. A wave of mocking snickers rippled through the classroom. Mason nodded awkwardly and quickly stepped down from the front to find an empty seat. A commotion filled the room as everyone started gossiping. Mason looked around, but his classmates were all discussing business investments, a topic he couldn't understand at all, leaving him feeling completely out of place. Finally, his gaze settled on the center of the crowd. What's that thing hanging on his bag? The former young master has really fallen on hard times, having to take the bus to school. That tuition waiver scholarship from the school seems pretty useful now. I almost forgot until you mentioned it. The scholarship and the financial aid slot should both go to our man Ethan. I found this both helpless and amusing. Just as I was about to get up and walk over, Mason spoke up with a righteous expression. You guys are going too far. Everyone looked at Mason, baffled. I was close with all of them and I'm generally easygoing, so we joked around like this all the time. It wasn't his place to get on a high horse about it. Leo thought Mason was nuts and had no desire to engage with the real heir. I know your biological family is poor and you're used to a life of luxury. You must be miserable back with the Hayes family. I can go plead with Mom and Dad for you. If you just apologize sincerely, I'm sure they'll let you come back. Mason acted as if he was deeply concerned for me, a performance that would usually make others see him as simple and kind, and me as the ungrateful fake. But the air suddenly went still. Everyone stared at Mason in silence, as if observing a strange new species. After a long moment, Leo turned to me and asked in bewilderment, "Isn't he embarrassed?" "I'm embarrassed for him." Hearing this, the whole group burst out laughing. That really was awkward to listen to. "I'm genuinely trying to help you. The Hayes family is bankrupt. They can't give you a good life. Mom and Dad are actually very kind people. They're just angry right now because you showed no sentiment and just took the money and left. If you go apologize to them, they'll definitely let you come back to the Montgomerys." I laughed, speechless. Having spent 17 years with the Montgomerys, I knew the couple far better than Mason did. They didn't necessarily even care about their own biological children, let alone an adopted son like me. "Samantha is designing a room for me? How come I haven't heard about this?" I raised the corner of my mouth in a meaningful smile. Mason lowered his eyes and smiled shyly. "I told them they didn't have to, but they said they've wronged me for too long and insisted on compensating me. They were adamant about hiring the best designer to renovate it exactly the way I like." I placed my phone on the desk and put it on speaker. "He's got some nerve," a furious voice roared from the phone. "That's all a load of crap. When did I ever agree to do a design for him? Mason, right? I told him to get lost when he called yesterday. Is he deaf or just stupid? He called himself a Montgomery heir, said he'd pay me to shut up and work, and claimed the Montgomerys were a family I couldn't afford to offend. Who wants his stinking money? I don't care if he's a Montgomery or a Rockefeller. What gives him the right to order me around? Spreading rumors and devaluing my brand. Can he even afford to compensate me for those damages?" The voice on the phone was sharp and biting. Leo decisively ended the call and shot me a look, as if seeking praise. I smiled and gave him a thumbs up. Everyone here was sharp. They knew each other's motives inside and out. They came to St. Ambrose not just to study, but to build a high-quality network, as these were the people they would be dealing with for the rest of their lives. Building relationships with valuable individuals was immensely beneficial for their future inheritances. Who was real gold and who was fool's gold didn't matter to them. What mattered was a person's value. Someone who consistently ranked at the top of the grade was destined to be a major player, making this a prime opportunity to build connections. I might not be a Montgomery anymore, but if Mason were to be separated from the Montgomery name, he would be nothing. Initially, no one held a prejudice against Mason. They were willing to be friendly out of respect for the Montgomerys' power. Unfortunately, he was too impatient and even dared to provoke me. Their silence was born from a reluctance to expose him, a refusal to waste time on someone worthless. But since Mason insisted on pushing the issue, they couldn't be blamed for being ruthless. The atmosphere grew heavy and awkward. Mason's face turned ashen, the corners of his eyes tinged with a pitiful, wronged red, making him look helpless and pathetic. While some were willing to stand up for me, others naturally couldn't stand me. Julian rose to his feet, feigning indignation. "You guys are going too far. Is it fun to humiliate someone like this? Mason is just worried about you. The Hayes family is bankrupt, and he only wants to help. Do you really have to ostracize him like this?" Everyone looked over, speechless, seeing right through Julian's intentions. On the surface, Julian looked angry, but inwardly he was thrilled. After all, I had always outshone him. Now that the Hayes family was bankrupt, he could finally gain the upper hand, so he started posturing and trying to manipulate the situation. He could also use this opportunity to get on the good side of the real Montgomery heir. It was killing two birds with one stone. Mason looked up in surprise, trying to hide his embarrassment, and shot Julian a grateful look. Julian returned a gentle smile, his eyes showing a timely hint of sympathy, as if he truly considered Mason a friend. Just then, there was a knock on the classroom door. Everyone turned in unison to see Chloe standing outside, holding a file. "What's all the commotion in here?" Ignoring Julian's awkward posture completely, Chloe didn't even spare him a glance as she strode directly towards me. "I'm just here to deliver something to the young master." Despite her words, Julian wouldn't dare to talk back. While the students in this class were future heirs to their family fortunes, the woman before them, Chloe, was already a figure who could stand on equal footing with their parents. Mason secretly sized up the newcomer. The girl was dressed in simple, clean clothes, with fair skin, a stunning face, and an ethereal air about her. On her wrist, she wore a deep red Bodhi seed bracelet. As she passed him, he caught a faint scent of citrus. Mason was deeply shaken. Zoe Hayes had once been praised for her beauty, but seeing this girl, he felt Zoe couldn't compare at all. Dressed so simply, she was probably just an errand girl. Mason had no idea that Chloe's outfit alone, combined with her other understated accessories, especially that Bodhi bracelet, was worth more than a villa in the Hamptons. Maya teased, "What's so important that it required a personal trip from our dear Chloe?" Chloe's gaze landed directly on me, her favoritism unconcealed. "I'm the young master's exclusive go-to person. Even if it's just a single leaf, I have to deliver it personally." The crowd erupted in good-natured jeers and laughter. But Chloe and I weren't flustered. We remained open and at ease. Everyone in the class knew about our relationship. We were childhood friends who had grown up together, and we both understood each other's feelings. There was nothing to hide. We hadn't made it official only because the time wasn't right. We wanted to focus more on our careers. Chloe placed the file on my desk, instantly drawing a crowd of amazed onlookers. Everyone gathered around to see what was going on. This project proposal is beautifully done. When Ethan's involved, it's always extraordinary. Looks like this year's spot is yours for the taking. My proposal scored much higher than the rest. I just smiled without saying a word, my relaxed posture suggesting I already had victory in hand. Mason glanced over and recognized it as something Lily had helped with. Didn't the little Hayes girl make that? Using a kid's scribbles for a major project proposal is so disrespectful to the other competitors. Maya shot him a speechless look. That's a pretty presumptuous thing to say. This proposal was ranked number 1 in the evaluation, and you call it scribbles? Mason was instantly struck dumb. I curved my lips into a smile and said, my sister put a lot of heart into this. It was something special she prepared for me. How can your empty theories compare? My tone was clearly protective. The group complained about my favoritism. Chloe, you've got to get him under control. Chloe stuck her hands in her pockets and leaned over my desk slightly. It's always been the young master who manages me. What right do I have to manage him? I couldn't help but chuckle at that, my fingers hooking onto Chloe's bracelet. Mason, unwilling to be ignored, stepped forward. You're not a student here, are you? I understand working to earn money, but Chloe narrowed her eyes in confusion. She knew Mason had some issues, but she never imagined he could be this clueless. The room fell silent for a moment. Someone had just called Chloe an errand girl. This was probably the most absurd joke of the year. Leo was laughing so hard he couldn't stand up straight. You think Chloe is an errand girl? What do you possibly have to compare with Ethan? I also gave a speechless smile, retracting my earlier thought that Mason might be clever. The guy was indeed simple, but it was the simple-mindedness of a fool. To think that someone who could joke around with the wealthiest kids and be respectfully called Chloe by everyone was just an ordinary person. Chloe looked down at my hand. Samantha asked me to pass on a message. The design plans and furniture are all set. She wants to know if it's convenient to start construction tomorrow. I lowered my voice slightly. I'll get back to her later. Then I looked up, meeting the girl's deep eyes. Is the merger case all handled? You have a flight to catch this week, right? I immediately let go of her hand and gently nudged her arm. Then you should get going. Don't miss your flight. I'll bring you back a souvenir when I return. Chloe gently tipped my chin up. The two of us spoke so softly it was as if an invisible barrier had risen around us. The others instinctively kept their distance, not wanting to intrude, silently enjoying the sweet scene from the sidelines. Leo rested his chin in his hands, while a question mark seemed to slowly form above Maya's head. Is it really appropriate for you two to act like no one else is here? After school was the busiest time at the school gate, with many food vendors setting up shop. Even though Street Ambrose was full of rich kids, at this age, they still couldn't resist the allure of street food. Among the bustling crowd, Zoe's gentle and refined demeanor stood out. She was like a well-bred lady from an ancient time, with a hint of melancholy in her eyes. I thought that if Zoe were to act in a historical drama, she would surely capture the hearts of countless young men. Just look at Leo. The moment he saw Zoe, he couldn't even bear to blink. Two voices overlapped, and I followed the sound to see Mason, a brilliant smile on his face, jogging toward Zoe. Seeing Mason's bright smile, Zoe's heart was instantly thrown into turmoil. She remembered how he used to run towards her with the same excitement when she picked him up from school. She had once adored this younger brother. Right after the Hayes family went bankrupt, nothing had changed between them. They took the bus home together, sometimes even walking home enthusiastically. Mason would always ask for a piggyback ride halfway through, and Zoe would happily carry him home. He would lie on her back and say, "My sister is the best sister in the world, and I'm the happiest kid in the world." In an instant, that beautiful memory shattered. Mason's smile had vanished at some point, replaced by a twisted look of disgust. I don't want to squeeze onto the bus anymore. I've had enough of this. You carry me home. Why are you so useless? You can't even walk a few steps. Can't you just buy a bike? If you don't have money, go get a job. In the end, he abandoned his favorite sister, the one he once called the best in the world. Zoe swallowed hard, unsure of how to act around Mason now. Mason didn't notice her strange mood and continued to smile sweetly. I really miss the times we used to go to and from school together. It's a shame I transferred to St. Ambrose. The classmates here don't seem to like me very much. They only hang out with Ethan. As he spoke, Mason's smile slowly faded, and his eyes began to redden, as if I had led the charge in ostracizing him and he was deeply wronged. Zoe understood the implication in his words. Thinking about her interactions with me over the past few days, a rebuttal almost escaped her lips. Ethan isn't like that. He wouldn't be so petty. Although I was raised in a wealthy family for 17 years, I was easygoing and generous. I never complained that the Hayes' house was too small or that the bed was too hard. I praised Mrs. Hayes' cooking, bought candy for my little sister, and considered the family's needs, offering help where I could. I had behaved so well that it made her feel guilty. As an older sister, she felt she couldn't do much for me. Instead, I was the one worrying about everything. Mason's face instantly stiffened. He had assumed that no matter how decisively I left the Montgomerys, the moment I saw the dilapidated Hayes house, all my spoiled, rich boy temper would come out. But Zoe actually had a good impression of me. It seemed that, in just 2 or 3 days, she had already forgotten the brother she had spent 17 years with and had accepted me instead. Hearing Zoe's defense of me, Mason was stunned. I curved my lips into a smile. I wasn't aware the young Mr. Montgomery went around claiming sisters everywhere. My bright, almond-shaped eyes relaxed slightly, but a sharp, dangerous glint emerged. Or do you just enjoy stealing other people's sisters? The gloom hanging over Zoe vanished completely, replaced by a gentle smile on her lips. She didn't spare Mason another glance. A flicker of light passed through my eyes, and a soft curve slowly formed on my lips. Watching the two of us siblings walk away, a thick flame of jealousy ignited in Mason's eyes. Seeing us talking and laughing, he felt that all of this should have been his. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his palms without him feeling the pain, his breathing growing ragged. Only when our figures disappeared from sight did Mason gradually come back to his senses. He now had everything he had ever wanted, enjoying the wealth and luxury of the Montgomery family. They were just a bunch of poor nobodies. He was the true Montgomery heir. The sight of the luxurious Montgomery mansion instantly dispelled the resentment in Mason's heart, and he broke into a triumphant smile. Mason arrogantly ordered Mrs. Peterson, "What are you standing there for? Go make some tea now." Mrs. Peterson gave a slight bow. Since this young master had returned, whenever Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery were not home, the staff served him with extreme caution, barely daring to breathe. The slightest thing that displeased him would result in a tirade of scolding. If the tea wasn't good, he made them replace it. If the food wasn't to his liking, he made the chef remake it. The old Ethan had never lost his temper. At the very least, he had respected them as human beings. The current young master, Mason, would throw cups and plates at the slightest provocation. As if they weren't servants but slaves he could command at will. Mason's malicious voice sounded again, and Mrs. Peterson pushed aside her thoughts and hurried over with the tea. Mason took a sip from the cup, and the next second, he violently threw it at Mrs. Peterson. She instinctively took half a step back but couldn't dodge in time, and the scalding tea splashed all over the top of her foot. With her head bowed, Mrs. Peterson secretly rubbed her reddened hand and immediately knelt to pick up the broken pieces. "I'll go make a fresh cup." The butler saw all of this unfold. He adjusted the glasses on his nose, walked forward elegantly, and said softly, "Young master, it's time for your etiquette lesson." Mason glared at him resentfully. "What etiquette lesson?" The butler's expression remained unchanged. "The family reunion banquet is this weekend. The master and madam have specifically instructed that you be on time, and that no mistakes are to be made at the event." Mason shot to his feet. "What do you mean by that? Know your place. You're just a servant paid by the Montgomerys. Who are you to order me around?" The etiquette teacher was always stern-faced, holding a ruler, and would harshly criticize any mistake without any regard for his status. To be so bold, she clearly had the backing of Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery. The butler bowed his head slightly, his demeanor respectful but not subservient. "The two young mistresses will be returning for the banquet." Mason froze. He had heard that both of the Montgomery sisters had bad tempers. Regardless, this was his first time meeting his biological sisters, so he really should make a good impression. Once he won them over, he would be the undisputed son of the Montgomery family, and then who would dare to look down on him? Mason suppressed the anger in his heart and resignedly went to his etiquette lesson. In stark contrast to the cold atmosphere of the Montgomery estate, the Hayes' small home was filled with warmth. The family huddled together happily, occasionally placing food on each other's plates. The 2 chicken drumsticks were passed around, with the youngest getting one, the adults taking the wingtips, and those in the middle getting the wings. Mrs. Hayes smiled as she gave a wing to Zoe, while Lily and I each got a drumstick. Zoe seemed happier than usual, perhaps because seeing Mason again had brought her a sense of closure. I looked at the drumstick in my bowl and felt a rare warmth in my heart. The Montgomerys were extremely particular about table manners. The seats were far apart, talking during meals was strictly forbidden, not a single sound was to be made, and serving food to one another was absolutely not allowed. Moreover, Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery were often away, and my 2 sisters had been sent abroad to study, frequently leaving me to eat alone. The Hayes family was completely different. Family members shared the best things with each other, chatting and laughing during meals. Despite being squeezed into a tiny apartment, the atmosphere was warm and joyful, filled with the vibrant energy of life. Perhaps this was what a real home felt like. Mrs. Hayes rubbed her hands together shyly, looking a bit embarrassed. "With you kids all going to school and your father driving for Uber, I was thinking of starting a small business, setting up a stall to help ease the family's burden a little. I plan to sell some things near the elementary school, but I don't have much experience, so I'm not sure if I can make it work." Before she got married, she was the pampered daughter of her family, occasionally helping with simple chores but never having to worry about anything else. When she married Mr. Hayes, His business was already doing reasonably well, so she comfortably settled into the role of a full-time housewife, never having to work for a living. After the Hayes family went bankrupt, she wanted to find a proper job, but Mason complained that there was no one to do the housework, so she stayed home as a full-time homemaker. In reality, being a homemaker was not easy. It was a daily grind of tedious physical labor that took up the entire day, leaving no time to rest. Seeing her family struggle every day, she agreed to stay home and manage the household. Now that Ethan was back, everyone was filled with a new fighting spirit, eager to try again, and she wanted to contribute and do her part. Zoe immediately offered her full support. You're cooped up at home doing chores all day with no one to talk to. Setting up a stall is a great idea, something more meaningful. Whether you make money or not, just think of it as a way to get out and relax. Mr. Hayes put down his chopsticks and held his wife's hand tightly. You've worked so hard all these years. You've never done anything you truly wanted for yourself because of this family. People need to feel a sense of self-worth. If you have an idea to set up a stall, you should go for it. With the full support of her family, Mrs. Hayes let out a quiet sigh of relief and finally looked at me, who had been silent the whole time. I thought for a moment and answered seriously, selling stationery requires stocking a wide variety of items, which means higher initial costs. Plus, elementary school kids don't have much allowance, so it might take a long time to break even. Near my school, the drop-off and pickup times are fixed, and the food stalls there do pretty well. You could consider selling some snacks. There are several schools in that area, so you wouldn't lack for customers. The only thing is, setting up in the morning might be tough, as you'd have to wake up very early to prepare fresh ingredients. My point was that I approved of the stall idea. Mrs. Hayes smiled, as if a weight had been lifted. A little hard work is fine, but I can only cook simple home-style meals. I don't know how to make any fancy snacks. Your cooking is much better than what you get at restaurants, and we're not aiming for fancy anyway. Making something delicious and filling to sell as breakfast would definitely have a market. But as for what to sell specifically, I can't offer much advice. There were so many food carts at the school gate, but I had never visited a single one, nor had I ever paid attention to what they sold. As the young master of the Montgomery family, I had to constantly maintain my physique and posture, eat an absolutely healthy diet, and uphold my image at all times. The Montgomerys were stubbornly convinced that street food would severely lower one's status, and that a reputation for gluttony would tarnish the family name. During my years with them, I had long since suppressed any desire for such food. It wasn't until the Montgomerys, noticing how little I ate, had replaced their chefs one after another that I realized my lack of appetite wasn't because of the cooks, but because of the oppressive and cold atmosphere of the household. Zoe thought for a moment. When I was in middle school, there was a stall selling rice balls at the school gate, and they were pretty good. It seems like no one is selling them there anymore. If we sold rice balls, we'd definitely get customers. The couple exchanged a look. They seemed to think it was a good idea too. I'll buy the ingredients tomorrow and try making them. Your job will be to taste test for me. Mrs. Hayes had never been this excited. The thought of being able to earn money and contribute to the family filled her with energy. Mr. Hayes brought up a key point. If we're going to sell rice balls, don't we need a custom cart? I've seen other food vendors, and most of them have specially made carts where every ingredient has its place. Zoe also remembered. The old stall used a steamer to keep the rice balls warm, but I think we could use a wooden bucket instead. If we cover it tightly with a non-woven cloth, the insulation should still be pretty good. Mr. Hayes slapped his thigh happily. I'll ask my car buddies tomorrow where we can get one. Let's figure out what fillings to put in the rice balls now, and we'll buy the ingredients to test them out tomorrow. Zoe immediately cleared the table. As everyone gathered and enthusiastically discussed the plan, they occasionally threw in a funny joke, making the whole family laugh. I was amazed by their efficiency. The entire family was decisive and action-oriented. They had just mentioned starting a stall, and they were already finalizing the plan, discussing product ingredients, and calculating business costs. The less people have, the more courage they seem to possess to take risks and try new things. And it is often this extraordinary courage that leads them to success. I was completely swept up in the joyful atmosphere. Since I was now a part of this family, I found myself inexplicably raising my hand and volunteering. As for the cart, I can figure something out. The atmosphere suddenly fell silent. Everyone turned to look at me in unison, which made me feel a little uncomfortable. Mr. Hayes's brow furrowed slightly. I know you might have some savings from your time with the Montgomerys, but now that you're back with the Hayes family, you are my child. We can discuss family matters together, but there's no reason for a child to be spending money. That includes you asking Samantha to design the house. We certainly benefited from your connection, but for any expensive new furniture, Dad will pay you back. I felt a strange sensation in my heart. Perhaps it was because I had never truly experienced familial affection, making it difficult for me to adjust now. I happen to have a friend who works with stainless steel. Maybe we can get an old cart from him for cheap, I quickly added. Only after hearing this did Mr. Hayes nod in agreement. I then took the opportunity to mention that Samantha would be bringing workers over, so Mrs. Hayes wouldn't be caught off guard tomorrow. The family talked late into the night until past 1 in the morning. The 3 kids had school the next day, so everyone took turns showering. After my shower, I returned to my room, locked the door, and checked my phone. There was a message from Samantha. I could see the great designer had done her best. The final cost for materials and furniture didn't even include labor fees. She probably used her own construction team. Samantha never fully trusted outside contractors. Some would cut corners to meet deadlines, failing to meet her standards. For high-end interior design, she maintained her own construction team to handle the important parts, a cost that was normally added to the client's bill to recoup her expenses. Between friends, this amount of money was nothing. I always thought Samantha had a bad temper, but she was incredibly loyal. She always had a reason for scolding people, like a client with no taste or someone who was just ungrateful. How could that be Samantha's fault? It was clearly the other person's problem. I transferred the amount listed on the invoice, and a second later, I received a message from her. That Mason guy is insane. Guess what he said when he called? He actually called me a low-class person. Where does he get his sense of superiority? The Qing dynasty ended ages ago, and he's still here dividing people into upper and lower classes. He even tried to use the Montgomery name to threaten me, saying if I didn't create a design for him, I should just wait for the Montgomerys to blacklist me. How ridiculous. Does he think the Montgomerys are royalty? I think Mrs. and Mr. Montgomery have completely lost it too, kicking me out for his sake. They love to settle scores, and right after Mason's crazy phone call, an invitation from the Montgomerys arrived. Should I go and slap him in the face? I paused on her last sentence and replied with 3 words, met at school. When Maya mentioned receiving the invitation, her expression was one of pure schadenfreude. I'm definitely going to the Montgomery's family reunion banquet. A show this big, I have to live stream the whole thing for you. Maya knew Leo's temper well. You're not planning to crash the party, are you? They could openly declare their stance because they saw the Montgomery situation clearly. If they caused offense, so be it. The Montgomery family had been in business for generations and was a force to be reckoned with. Anyone who dared to provoke them at the family banquet and embarrass them publicly would face serious consequences. Leo might not have understood. Why would I need to do anything? Haven't you heard? The 2 Montgomery heiresses are coming back. He subconsciously looked at me, as if seeking an answer. My eyes flickered slightly. I'm just a bankrupt high school student now. My information isn't as good as yours. Maya raised an eyebrow, her tone full of teasing. Even if you're bankrupt, you're still a young master. I stopped and turned around. When the 3 of us got back to the classroom, we happened to hear Mason's voice. My mom and dad are hosting a family reunion banquet to introduce me as the Montgomery heir. I don't have any friends in this circle, so I hope you can all come. Seeing me enter from the doorway, Mason gave a seemingly harmless smile. There will be lots of good food at the banquet. Mom and dad are buying me new clothes. You can come over and pick out something you like. The clothes you buy only suit you. Our Ethan doesn't wear hand-me-downs, and he doesn't care about your good food. Every time I faced Mason, I could feel my friend's unwavering support. Even though I wasn't a Montgomery heir, I had plenty of people backing me up. I didn't spare Mason an extra glance and walked back to my seat. The Montgomery's etiquette teacher must not be very good. Invitations should be sent in advance. A last-minute one doesn't count. I hung my backpack on the side of my desk. He wrung his hands together, looking wronged and aggrieved. I just think your biological family is too poor, and you must be having a hard time. I wanted to invite you to the banquet, and I think Mom and Dad would agree to let you come back. Always, apologize, apologize. What did Ethan do wrong that he needs to apologize for? Mason immediately fell silent, tears welling up in his eyes, a perfect picture of a pitiful, innocent victim. He started the trouble, yet he was the one crying, acting as if he was the one being bullied. Julian wouldn't miss this opportunity and immediately stood up to speak for Mason. Mason is just too kind and worried you're not doing well. Why do you have to be so aggressive? Leo sneered. I think he's just crazy. Did he even ask Ethan if he wanted to go back to the Montgomerys? Does he need to make this hypocritical decision for him? Julian's lips moved. Being from the same circle, he naturally saw through Mason's facade. However, he was different from Leo. Leo was a unique case in their class, with loving parents and a harmonious family, destined to inherit the family business. Julian, on the other hand, had brothers, and his inheritance wasn't guaranteed. He didn't trust fate, so he was looking for a marriage alliance. If he could marry one of the Montgomery heiresses, his future would be secure. By connecting his family with the Montgomerys, he would gain more importance at home. He chose to side with Mason because, while Mason was naive to this circle, his foolishness made him easier to control. But I couldn't be bothered to interfere. After all, what others planned was none of my business, as long as they didn't mess with me. I knew better than anyone here how complicated the upper-class world was. It was better to avoid trouble and not make enemies everywhere. You never know if someone on the fringes today might be at the top of the pyramid tomorrow. With this in mind, I spoke up to break the stalemate, wanting to prevent Leo from making enemies on my behalf. I looked at Mason. Let me tell you two things. First, I have no intention of returning to the Montgomerys. Second, I have no interest in competing with you for favor. As long as you don't come looking for trouble with me, we can all get along peacefully. But if you dare to cross my line, we'll see if the Montgomery name can protect you. The sobbing Mason's heart jolted when he heard this. He looked up at me in disbelief, meeting my calm and confident gaze. He couldn't understand it. I showed no signs of dejection. The class still supported me as always, and everyone still respectfully called me their bro. Now I even dared to speak so boldly. Who on earth was giving me this much confidence? What if Chloe wasn't mine anymore? Seeing Mason staring at me with a probing look, Maya sat beside him nonchalantly. With that pig brain of yours, you'll never figure it out. He didn't know how powerful I was. He only knew that whatever they wanted, things they couldn't get even by begging and pleading, I could always manage to acquire for them. My network might not compare to the Montgomerys on its own, but if you combined all my resources, even a family at the pinnacle of New York's elite like the Montgomerys could one day come crashing down. Maya let out a leisurely, cold laugh. To make it in this circle, the first thing you need is a good eye for people. Her tone was laced with mockery. Leo had no desire to lecture Mason, but to save himself the trouble of Mason causing problems later, he unusually didn't contradict Maya's words. Mason nearly ground his molars to dust, his eyes, fixed on me, gradually turning red. Finally, he turned and ran out in a fit of rage. Julian called out his name hypocritically, and after being ignored, a faint smile played on his lips as he said lightly, "If you want to gain someone's trust, you do it when their psychological defenses are at their weakest." He looked at me warily. "I don't do things that don't benefit me. You have no value to me." Julian pouted, then slowly walked out of the classroom to chase after the fleeing Mason. The two annoying people had finally left the classroom, just as expected of someone raised by the Montgomerys. All he sees is business and profit, with no warmth or conscience to speak of. Ethan got along with them because they were of a similar age and had known each other for many years, building trust over time. To me, the Hayes family were just strangers with a blood connection. "How long do you plan on staying with the Hayes family?" Leo was a bit curious about this. With my personality and abilities, leaving the Montgomerys meant I would most likely strike out on my own. Going to the Hayes family now probably meant I had other plans, but I definitely wouldn't stay there forever. Being a minor came with many inconveniences. At 18, I could open my own accounts and be independent. I wouldn't face any major changes until then. I wasn't helping the Hayes family for nothing. The renovation, for instance, was purely because I wanted a more comfortable living space. A young master like me couldn't handle hardship. I couldn't spend a whole year sleeping poorly. It was also a way to feel less indebted to the Hayes family when I eventually left. Julian stood on the 5th floor hallway of the academic building, watching Mason crying alone behind the rock garden. After waiting for about 20 minutes, Julian slowly made his way down. Just before reaching the rock garden, he messed up his hair, did 2 sets of high knees, and then ran over, panting, pretending to be anxious. "So you were hiding here. I've been looking for you for ages." Mason looked at Julian in surprise. How could I possibly be in the mood for class? Feeling Julian's concern, Mason, who hadn't expected anyone to take his side, felt all his pent-up grievances burst forth. Tears streamed down his face like broken pearls. "I just wanted to get along with my classmates. I didn't expect them to be so prejudiced." Julian gently patted his back. "That group is always like that, always following Ethan's lead. I can't stand their attitude, which is why I don't really hang out with them in class. I can be your friend." Mason was so moved that a light appeared in his eyes, and he nodded emphatically. Since returning to the Montgomerys, he hadn't found anyone to confide in. Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery were often away. His 2 sisters were abroad, and besides a bunch of clueless servants, he had no friends at school. Everyone fawned over me, and no one understood his pain. He couldn't very well talk to a dog, could he? Julian took Mason's hand. "I understand you. Going from an ordinary family to a wealthy one, there's so much you have to adapt to. The pressure must be immense. From now on, you can talk to me when you're unhappy. I might not be able to help much, but having someone to listen will make you feel a lot better." Mason squeezed Julian's hand back. "Are the people in class so biased towards Ethan because of Chloe Lockwood?" Chloe wasn't in their class, yet everyone respected her immensely, which suggested some kind of deal between us. My independence from the Montgomery name was partly due to my good relationship with Chloe. The fact that I could still thrive after being bankrupt was certainly thanks to her in part. But Julian didn't know the full story, so he vaguely explained, "Ethan has known Chloe and Maya for many years. Their relationship isn't based on benefits. Especially Chloe. She and Ethan are childhood sweethearts. Though they're not an official couple, just looking at the 2 of them, plus Leo, the undisputed heir of the Harrison family, who is completely loyal to Ethan, their bond is stronger than that of many actual brothers. With those 2 backing him, who would dare to offend him?" Julian had to admit that Ethan himself was an exceptional person. Julian didn't say this last part out loud, so Mason was left to believe that my ability to command respect was entirely due to the support of Chloe and Leo. "Is the Lockwood family very powerful?" Julian cleared up his confusion. The Lockwoods are one of New York's original elite families, with assets and influence comparable to the Montgomerys. The two families have close business ties. However, the heads of the Lockwood family, Chloe's parents, were in a car accident a few years ago and haven't woken up since, so Chloe had to take over early. This is no secret in New York's high society. Chloe is a formidable figure herself. She had just graduated high school at the time, gave up her plans to study abroad, and directly took on the vast Lockwood empire. In the past year, she hasn't made a single mistake and has managed everything impeccably. The elders all respect her from the bottom of their hearts, calling her young Chairman Lockwood. Listening to Julian's explanation, Mason thoughtfully fiddled with the corner of his shirt. The Montgomery and Lockwood families were close. If Chloe became his fiancée, there would be no way for Ethan to threaten his position. In the old apartment building, Mrs. Hayes was test-making rice balls today, which required a lot of ingredients, so Mr. Hayes didn't go out to drive and stayed home to help her. When Mr. Hayes saw Samantha, he was puzzled. He quickly stepped aside and respectfully invited her in. Samantha stepped inside and greeted them politely. She glanced at the busy figure in the kitchen and raised her voice. "I'm Ethan's friend. I've brought some workers to renovate the rooms. I hope we're not disturbing you." Mrs. Hayes quickly wiped her hands and came out. "Please, sit down and have some tea." Samantha waved her hand. "No need to be so formal," Ethan said to clear out all the old furniture. "You just need to pack up your clothes and other small items. If you still want the old furniture, just tell me where to put it, and I'll have my people move it." Mrs. and Mr. Hayes exchanged a look, both of them a bit stunned. Mr. Hayes asked in confusion, "What do you mean?" Now it was Samantha's turn to belung. "Didn't Ethan tell you? He asked me to renovate the entire apartment and bought all new furniture." Mr. Hayes's brain felt like it was about to short-circuit. All new furniture? How much would that cost? Mrs. Hayes grabbed Mr. Hayes's arm, signaling him not to overthink it. It was already bought, so they shouldn't waste Samantha's time. She quickly took off her apron, placed it on the coffee table, and smiled kindly at Samantha. "Let's just put the old furniture downstairs for now. Don't trouble yourself with clearing it. We have a large truck, so it's easy for us to haul it away. Otherwise, you'd have to hire people for all this furniture." "We have a large truck, so it's easy to haul away," Samantha said quickly. She was an impatient person who meant what she said. Mrs. Hayes rubbed her hands. "Then I'll go pack up the master bedroom first. There's less stuff in there, so it'll be easier to pack." Samantha shouted to the workers behind her. "3 of you, move the furniture downstairs. 2 of you, go in and tear off the wallpaper." While the couple packed up the room, Samantha supervised the work. "Align the corners of the wallpaper better. What are your eyes for? Why are you leaving such a huge gap? Didn't you see the plaster flaking off? Don't you know to clean it before applying? Are you planning to grow flowers in there? Do a better job on the window frame corners. If it's crooked, tear it all off and do it again." Any client in the world hearing this would have their hair stand on end. The workers' hands couldn't help but move faster. The nitpicking designer, Samantha, truly lived up to her reputation. With the house busy with renovations, Mr. Hayes sometimes lent a hand, while Mrs. Hayes returned to the kitchen to continue making rice balls. "Designer Sue, have a cup of tea," Mrs. Hayes said, bringing her a cup. Samantha, who had been standing with her hands on her hips scolding someone, immediately quelled her anger at the sound of her voice. She turned, took the cup with both hands and said, "Thank you, ma'am. You don't have to be so formal. I've known Ethan for many years. You can just call me Sam." Mrs. Hayes thought the girl was quite polite, not as difficult to get along with as she had imagined. "I'm planning to set up a stall to sell rice balls, and I'm trying them out at home today. I didn't cook lunch, so if you're hungry, would you like to try one?" Samantha didn't hesitate at all. "I am a little hungry, actually." A smile spread across Mrs. Hayes's face. She glanced at the busy workers. "Why don't we let them take a break? With so many people, won't it be a bother for you?" "Not at all, not at all. I was actually hoping to get more opinions." Since Mrs. Hayes insisted, Samantha told everyone to stop working and have something to eat before continuing. Mrs. Hayes went to the kitchen and brought out the rice balls. There were several different flavors, all cut in half so that everyone could try them and offer their feedback. Samantha hadn't even taken a bite yet, but seeing the fillings, she was already full of praise. "Most rice balls you buy outside use frozen ingredients these days. It's rare to see someone use fresh ones like you do." After tasting it, she gave a thumbs up. "This is delicious." She showered Mrs. Hayes with praise, providing maximum emotional validation. The workers also ate with great enjoyment. As they went back to work, Mrs. Hayes asked Samantha to sit down for tea. Sensing that she had questions, Samantha sat down. "How did you and Ethan meet?" "He's not that old, but we've known each other for about 10 years now." Mrs. Hayes responded thoughtfully, then, after a moment, said with some embarrassment, "Since Ethan came back, I felt that he's very distant from us. Could you tell me more about him, about his life?" Samantha understood now. Ethan was staying with the Hayes family for his own reasons, but they genuinely cared for him. However, having never experienced real family affection, he was naturally cold and detached. Although he acted easygoing, There was a huge gap between him and a real family. Mrs. Hayes wanted to show her concern but didn't know how. Samantha sighed softly. She could tell that the Hayes parents were good people. Worried that Ethan would suffer at the Hayes' home, she decided to tell them what she knew. When Ethan was with the Montgomerys, his adoptive parents didn't pay much attention to him. He was raised by the two Montgomery daughters. But he wasn't spoiled. It was more like a love-hate relationship, a constant battle of wits. As a result, he never experienced warmth and became less emotionally expressive. He has a lot of friends, but that can't fill the void left by the lack of family affection. He gradually became composed, with more poise and grace than his peers, but he lacks the spontaneity a person his age should have. The Montgomery house is hardly a home. It's devoid of warmth, cold as a machine. The three children they raised all have incredible talents, but none of them think normally, and they all have extreme flaws. Hearing about the kind of life her child had lived with the Montgomerys, Mrs. Hayes' heart ached uncontrollably. She had assumed that her son, wanting for nothing, must have been happy there, and that returning to a poor family would be a shock he couldn't accept, eventually creating a rift. Now she knew the truth. Her son had never felt warmth, and that was why he had become so cold. What does Ethan usually like to eat? I really don't know about that. I only heard that the Montgomerys changed chefs frequently. None of them ever lasted more than 6 months. After getting off the bus from school, Zoe and I went to the elementary school to pick up Lily. Many people greeted Zoe along the way. Did your family strike it rich? Why did you replace all your furniture? Zoe was taken aback by the question and subconsciously glanced at her brother beside her. Wasn't it just a small adjustment to the layout, adding a desk? Why was all the furniture replaced? I blinked. It was Samantha's idea. She knows people at the furniture brands, so it didn't cost much. I decided to let Samantha take the blame. Samantha, who was in the middle of scolding someone again, sneezed. She shivered and said, "There must be too much dust. I should wear a mask next time." When the three siblings got home, workers were cleaning up trash in the guest bedroom, and 2 others were replacing the sink in the kitchen. Zoe and Lily were shocked. By the door was a new small shoe rack. It was too narrow to fit a pair of shoes horizontally, but when you pulled it open, you realized the shoes were stored at an angle. When the cabinet door was closed, the angle increased, saving a lot of space. Although the rack wasn't large, it was enough to hold the whole family's shoes, which no longer had to be piled under the beds. The worn-out walls were covered with wallpaper. The old sofa was replaced with a stain-resistant one, and it was paired with a new glass coffee table. The small table in the corner wasn't thrown out. It still held a vase, now with fresh carnations. The living room window, which used to have curtains, was now fitted with pure white blinds, making the space look cleaner and more minimalist. Bathed in sunlight, the warm-toned room felt incredibly cozy. Samantha came out of the guest bedroom, her face lighting up when she saw me. She pulled me over as if seeking praise. "Come see the guest room renovation. I guarantee you'll be satisfied." Zoe and Lily followed us in, curious to see how their own room had been changed. When they saw the finished product, the sisters were so shocked their eyes nearly popped out. The overall color scheme was a fresh sea blue. The inner part of the room was raised with wooden panels, creating a tatami-style platform with storage underneath. Without the wardrobe, the space felt much more spacious. It was still a bunk bed setup, with the top bed horizontal and the bottom one vertical, a mattress placed directly on the wooden platform. Beside it, a set of stairs led to the top bunk, much safer than the original vertical ladder. Each step was a drawer that could be used for books and miscellaneous items. In the other corner, a small desk was built, with space for both sisters to work without disturbing each other. The narrow room had been transformed into a spacious and beautiful space with all the necessary functions. It was truly the work of a famous interior designer. "This drawer can be pulled out and used as a bookshelf," Samantha explained, pulling out a drawer from under the stairs to reveal a space where books could be stored vertically. She then knocked on the raised wooden platform and looked at Lily. "Your brother said you like to draw. This material is stain-resistant, so you can sit here and paint without worrying about making a mess." Lily's small eyes sparkled with starlight. She exclaimed excitedly, "Thank you, Sister Samantha. Thank you, brother. I have my own space now. I can draw as much as I want." Seeing the child's radiant smile, Samantha felt a surge of pride. She ruffled Lily's head, her heart filled with satisfaction. Samantha leaned towards me. "This whole house, not including the design fee, cost over $50,000 in materials alone. If I hadn't negotiated my heart out, there's no way it could have been done for $20,000. You truly are the great designer, Samantha. No one else could have done it this perfectly." Samantha immediately held her head high. "If your budget hadn't been so low, I would have torn out the floor tiles and redone all the walls." I turned to the person beside me and said, "I'll treat you to dinner when I have time. The new Moonlit Night collection just came out." Meeting her expectant gaze, I nodded. "I'll have it sent to you in a couple of days." I lazily narrowed my eyes. After finishing the final touches, Samantha and her workers left. The Hayes couple invited her to stay for dinner. Once all the outsiders had left, the family discussed what to eat for dinner. They had been busy with the renovation all day, and the couple hadn't had time to shop or cook. Tonight, they would take the kids out for a nice meal. Mrs. Hayes took my hand and held it in her palm, asking softly, "Ethan, do you like hot pot?" I wasn't used to physical contact with people I didn't know well, but after a moment's thought, I didn't pull my hand away. I answered Mrs. Hayes's question. "What about it?" The only time I had hot pot was the year before last, at a gathering in a hot pot restaurant I owned. The food was quite good, but the prices were probably not very accessible. Rich people rarely go out for hot pot, so it closed down after 2 months. I haven't had hot pot since. Zoe suggested, "Let's go for hot pot then. The one at the intersection is pretty good, and their ingredients are fresh. Our brother had someone renovate the house for us. We should treat him." The decision was made quickly. After a little preparation, the family of 5 walked to the hot pot restaurant. Mrs. Hayes held my hand and didn't want to let go. I felt her attitude was more affectionate than usual. Maybe this was how it was between a biological mother and son. We got a large table at the restaurant. After we sat down, Mr. Hayes handed me the menu and told me to order whatever I liked. I passed the menu to Zoe. "I'm in charge of eating." Everyone laughed. Zoe started ordering the food. After dinner, our parents took our little sister home to rest. The streets were brightly lit at night, with salespeople from the shops shouting slogans. I brought up a random topic. "Why are you still in your senior year of high school?" The file the Montgomerys gave me said she was supposed to be in college this year, but she didn't apply and instead repeated a year. Given the Hayes family's current financial situation, no matter what happened, Zoe should have graduated from college as soon as possible, not pulled strings to repeat a year. At this question, Zoe lowered her eyes in silence for a moment, then let out a soft, self-deprecating laugh. She knew I would find out sooner or later, so there was no need to hide it. "Do you know why the Hayes family went bankrupt?" I shook my head. This was related to the family's bankruptcy. Zoe ruffled her brother's hair. "The family went bankrupt as an act of revenge after our oldest sister, Sarah, took a part-time job at a restaurant. At the time, the Hayes family was considered wealthy, but they had only made their fortune in the last decade or so and couldn't compare to the old money families. Sarah, having watched the family become rich, never took it for granted and didn't want to be a pampered heiress. Instead, she chose to improve herself. She hoped that even without the family's help, she would have the ability to support herself, realize her own potential, and one day help the family business grow. So, starting in high school, she would take classes or work part-time jobs during long breaks to earn her own money, and in the process, she unintentionally offended someone she shouldn't have. Mason always blamed the bankruptcy on our oldest sister, criticizing her for always going out. The pressure on Sarah was immense, and Mason constantly spoke to her with harsh words. Zoe sighed, her mood heavy. Mason's temper grew more and more volatile, and one time, he even got physical with Sarah. I tried to protect her and got pushed by Mason. I hit my head on the wardrobe and was diagnosed with a concussion. It was right before the college entrance exams. Although it wasn't a major injury, I had bouts of nausea and dizziness which caused me to perform poorly on the exams. My parents and teachers all advised me to repeat the year. I listened with my lips pressed together and then asked, "Don't you hate Mason?" Zoe lowered her eyes in disappointment. "He was the brother we doted on for 17 years. Families don't hold grudges. I just never thought he would leave so decisively." I understood Zoe's self-deprecating smile. To be treated with genuine affection for 17 years, only to be betrayed in the end. A betrayal of emotion is far more painful than a betrayal of interests. Zoe suddenly looked at her brother, her eyes filled with a soft warmth. "We're a family. We don't need to keep score of everything." Zoe continued, "We're good to you not because we expect anything in return, but simply because you're our family, and we hope that one day, you'll fully accept us." I chose the inner bed and pulled the covers over me. The new bed was so comfortable. It was finally not like sleeping on a wooden board. I turned on the small clip-on fan, sat up and called Chloe. The moment the call connected, a low chuckle came from the other end. "What can I do for you, young master? Don't tell me you missed me?" "Just bored." Perhaps because I didn't experience much family affection in my childhood, I've always been reserved in expressing my feelings. I've never said things like, "I miss you." If I had business to discuss, I'd say it directly. When I said I was bored and wanted to chat, it meant I missed her. Chloe's laughter was radiant, a blush creeping up to her eyes. "Does the young master want a 50-cent chat or a $5 one? You're charging me?" For the young master to call me for a chat, I'm definitely the one who's profiting. I couldn't help but smile. "In that case, I'll have to charge by the hour. Let's say $5 an hour. No friends and family discount?" Chloe glanced at the time. "How about 500 for 2 hours? My chest shook with laughter. "You're a good businesswoman. All the documents are signed. They'll be sent for notarization tomorrow, and it should be approved in 2 or 3 days. Chloe stopped what she was doing and leaned back in her office chair to chat with me. I gave a distracted response and then told Chloe about what happened tonight. Chloe found it amusing. "Are you scared?" Her question sounded more like a statement, as if she understood my emotions better than I did. You're afraid of family affection. Once, I too longed for family affection. My parents' attention was always on my sisters, focusing on their education, while I was always the one overlooked. At the Montgomerys, I had the best of everything, but I also wanted their approval. I worked hard, always ranking first in every exam and attending every training class they arranged, all for a word of praise from my parents. But that hope was always in vain. When I was 8, I understood why my sisters were learning business while I was taking etiquette classes, why they were reading financial reports while I was watching foreign language speeches. I would never be taught about business because I was just a pawn for a marriage alliance. All I needed to do was learn to be docile and obedient, to eventually become a bargaining chip in an exchange of benefits. I no longer held any expectations for family affection. As for the care from the Hayes family, my feeling that their actions were illogical and my desperate attempts to find malice in them were just my own form of escapism. A long time passed without me saying a word. Some things are just hard to figure out. You deserve to receive all the love in the world, and you have the strength to face any changes. There's nothing to worry about. Chloe's words calmed me down considerably. 2 years ago, when the Hayes family went bankrupt, I also found out I wasn't a Montgomery. After I told Chloe, it was as if she deliberately erased my surname. No matter what your last name is, no matter what happens in the future, I will always be by your side. She was the one who gave me the resolve to leave the Montgomerys. The girl's low voice came through the phone. Ethan, you just keep moving forward. I'll always be behind you. You are my trump card, even if I have to bet all my chips on you. Perhaps my warning that day had an effect, because for a while after, Mason attended his classes quietly. In the blink of an eye, it was time for the family reunion banquet. Seeing Leo at the party, Maya was quite surprised. What are you doing here? Aren't you on Ethan's side? I'm here to scout the enemy, Leo said, always ready to defend his brother's honor. Just passing by. Then he answered Maya's question. The 2 Montgomery heiresses are back. I have to live stream this for Ethan. He excitedly pulled out his phone, ready to broadcast for his brother at a moment's notice. After Maya entered, she scanned the room with a somber expression and strode forward purposefully. Just as she was about to speak, an announcement echoed through the banquet hall from Mr. Montgomery's microphone on stage. They looked over to see Mason dressed in a white suit, the doted-on young master, smiling with elegant tranquility and self-satisfaction. Leo quickly started a video call with his brother, whispering, "The show's about to start." As the banquet began, he did a 360-degree pan of the scene. Guess what your hot-tempered sister will give him? It definitely won't be anything good. I sat at the desk in my room, the lamplight illuminating my fair face. A halo of light shimmered in my bright eyes, and a faint smile played on my lips. I'm not chatting anymore. I'm going to get something to eat. If anything interesting happens, send me a video. Mission accepted. Leo made a gesture in front of the camera, ended the call, and then switched to his camera app. He hit the record button, planning to film the entire event so as not to miss any exciting moments. Mr. Montgomery gave a lengthy opening speech on stage, with Mrs. Montgomery acting expressively beside him, as if they were truly a loving family, father and son, mother and son, deeply connected. When he was about done, Mr. Montgomery handed the microphone to Mason, letting him greet everyone. I'm Mason. When I found out that the parents who raised me for 17 years, it was a grandiloquent speech most likely written by a professional for him to memorize. Leo curled his lip in disgust and rolled his eyes. Maya wasn't paying attention to what Mason was saying. Few people here cared about how he had lived for the past 17 years or how the Montgomerys had found him. They were here simply because it was a Montgomery banquet. Regardless of any business dealings, as one of the most powerful families in New York, the Montgomerys had to be shown this respect. She noticed Leo holding his phone up to record, occasionally switching hands when he got tired. She moved closer to him and whispered in his ear. Leo instinctively turned to look at her, suddenly realizing how close they were, and quickly turned back, handing her the phone. Although they were engaged, both had just come of age. The engagement was a business alliance arranged in their childhood, and they had always treated each other like brothers, with no romantic feelings whatsoever. At least that's what Leo thought. Seeing him press his lips together and shuffle to the side, Maya's lips curved into a slight smile. Even her hyper-energetic childhood friend could be shy sometimes. Mason on stage hadn't recited more than a few lines, and Maya had just taken the phone, when the roar of a car engine suddenly came from outside. Although the banquet hall was on the ground floor, it was located in the innermost part of the hotel. No car sounds should have been audible. Mason's speech was interrupted, and everyone looked towards the main entrance in confusion. With a loud crash, a black Apollo IE burst through the doors, causing everyone to scream and scatter in panic. The long tables laden with pastries and champagne were overturned, spilling drinks all over the floor, and the scene descended into chaos. Mr. Montgomery, who had been playing the part of a benevolent father, now had a dark expression as he stared intently at the sports car. The car screeched to a halt in the middle of the hall. A German shepherd leaped out of the passenger seat and charged towards Mason on the stage. Mason was afraid of dogs and screamed in terror. He instinctively backed away, tripped, and fell head over heels. "Stay away from me," he yelled, flailing his arms and legs wildly. However, everyone else could see clearly that the dog had stopped a few feet away from Mason and hadn't even tried to bite him. The driver's side door of the sports car opened, and a tall girl stepped out. She was dressed in loose casual wear and hooked her sunglasses off her nose with a long finger. She leaned lazily against the car, her entire being exuding an air of untamable rebellion. Having thrown the banquet into chaos, she showed not a hint of apology. Her thin lips curved into a lazy, wicked smile. "Little brother, why the foul mouth? Your big sister was kind enough to give you a dog as a welcome gift. If you don't like it, fine, but why the nasty words?" There was no kindness to be seen. It looked more like she was deliberately crashing the party. She beckoned to the dog, and it obediently ran to her, sat down, and wagged its tail. Mr. Montgomery's face turned pale with anger. "Who gave you permission to drive in here? What is the meaning of this? Take your dog, get in your car, and leave this place immediately." Rebecca Montgomery put the dog back in the car and clicked her tongue twice. "Why are you so angry, father? Your daughter is back after 2 years abroad and you don't miss her? Got a new son, so you don't care about your daughter anymore. Don't make me say it a third time." Mr. Montgomery's tone grew heavier. Rebecca, looking utterly unconcerned, got into the car, reversed, and drove away. The eldest daughter, Victoria Montgomery, had entered at some point and began to soothe the guests. "My sister is immature. I apologize for the fright she gave you all. I've had a new banquet hall prepared next door. Please, follow me." With Victoria stepping in to smooth things over, everyone gave her some face, and no one delved further into what had just happened. Seeing that the show was over, Leo took his phone back, stopped the recording, and sent it to me. Absolutely spectacular. Mason was taken to a private lounge by his parents, where the atmosphere was so tense he could barely breathe. He wrung his hands together, his voice as faint as a mosquito's buzz, as he tremblingly apologized. "I was just scared. I've been afraid of dogs since I was a child." Mr. Montgomery glared at him furiously. "In front of everyone, you spewed such filth. You've completely disgraced the Montgomery name." Mason's eyes reddened in disbelief. He had been coddled and spoiled his whole life and had never been scolded so harshly. He looked up defiantly at his biological father. "It was clearly my sister's fault." Before he could finish, Mr. Montgomery cut him off coldly. "If I had known you were so useless, I never would have brought you back." He didn't understand what he had done wrong. Rebecca was the one who caused the trouble, so why was he the one being yelled at? He looked pleadingly at Mrs. Montgomery. They say a mother and son's hearts are connected. Surely his mother would help him. Mrs. Montgomery's face was cold, her expression no better than her husband's. Her voice was icy and devoid of warmth. "How many people did you make a fool of us in front of today? If there's a next time, I'll send you away myself. Now go home, immediately." Mr. Montgomery shot Mason a piercing glare and then left with his wife to deal with the aftermath. All the strength drained from his body, and Mason collapsed onto the floor, laughing self-deprecatingly. No wonder Ethan had left so decisively back then, not even packing his clothes, just grabbing a backpack with his important documents and leaving the Montgomery estate in less than an hour. "When Mrs. Montgomery came to bring me back, I didn't want to come at all." Mason took a deep breath, then got up with a blank expression and walked out like a zombie. Family affection, it was completely unimportant. He now had a life of luxury, living above everyone else. This was all he had ever wanted. Unlike the heavy atmosphere of the Montgomery banquet, the Hayes' home was warm and joyful. Dinner was my favorite dish, fish with pickled greens, and Lily ate and laughed at the same time. Zoe also had something to say. "My classmate's older sister works at a film production company. They're making a lot of short web series based on novels right now. She said I have a good look and that if I wanted a part-time job, she could recommend me for an acting role." That doesn't sound reliable, does it? The industry is full of shady characters and scams these days. They make you pay a training fee upfront, promise to find you work later, and then you never hear from them again. Mr. Hayes, having been a businessman, had heard of many such schemes. Easy jobs like being a fitting model always felt like a scam to him. In truth, Zoe wasn't sure either. After all, there was no shortage of elaborate scams these days. "I just wanted to ask your opinion first. If you agree, I'll go for an interview. If they really ask for a training fee, I'll turn around and walk out." "I think you should," I said in support. "I was just looking at your face earlier, sis. You could become a huge star from this and get discovered by a talent scout. And if you don't, I can give things a little push from behind the scenes, and the result will be the same. You should go try it. What if you find acting fun? It would give you another option for the future," I added encouragingly. Zoe laughed. "All right, I'll listen to you and give it a try tomorrow." "Ethan, do you want to come with me? I was just idling at home anyway, so I might as well go out." I told her, "Let's go after lunch tomorrow. I want to sleep in the morning." Zoe affectionately ruffled my hair. After dinner, I took the kitchen scraps to throw out downstairs. Worried it might be unsafe at night, Zoe came with me. The two of us went downstairs, threw out the trash, and then leisurely went to buy some bubble tea. Just as we reached the intersection, a sleek sports car sped towards us and came to a steady stop right in front of us. Seeing the Apollo supercar, I stopped in my tracks. My eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint appearing in them, and the smile on my face vanished instantly. Rebecca Montgomery got out of the car, resting her hands on the roof and staring at me with a wicked grin. Her opening words were anything but kind. Well, if it isn't my silent little brother. It's only been a few days since you left the Montgomerys, and you're already dressed so shabbily. I smirked. Isn't the young master at home enough for you to deal with? Did you really come all the way out here just to check on me? So tense, are we? Your big sister really does care about you, you know? There wasn't a hint of sincerity in Rebecca's words. She walked around the front of the car to face me, each step casual and unrestrained. We haven't seen each other in over a year. I even prepared a special gift for you. She pulled open the passenger door, and the German Shepherd jumped out, trotted to her side, and sat down obediently. I still hadn't watched the video Leo sent me. I knew Rebecca loved her cars more than anything, but this limited edition sports car was covered in countless battle scars, with large patches of paint scraped off and dried on stains from spilled drinks. Considering the time, it didn't take a genius to guess what she had been up to. Since she hadn't gone anywhere else in between, this dog must have been the one she brought to the family banquet. Rebecca leaned against the passenger door. My proud little master hasn't changed a bit, still doesn't like second-hand things. But this dog was bought for you. I just took it to put on a little show. You're not going to be that petty, are you? I let out a cold laugh and walked towards Rebecca step by step until I was just half a pace away. I stared directly into her eyes, my voice calm but laced with a chilling coldness. Miss Montgomery, you have a real talent for being disgusting, and I absolutely despise little dogs. It was unclear whether I was referring to the dog at her feet or the person in front of me. The two of us stared each other down. Zoe's presence was like a gentle breeze. She was unfazed by the tense atmosphere. The bubble tea shop is about to close. Rebecca seemed to notice Zoe for the first time, her contemptuous gaze sweeping over her. A broke girl from a bankrupt family thinks she has the right to talk to me? Zoe's expression was calm, seemingly without any hostility. Ethan is my brother. Whatever issues you have between you, his business is my business. Rebecca's laughter was filled with scorn. You're not worthy of being his sister. I retorted without mercy. She's not worthy? Then are you? I emphasized the last word heavily. Rebecca didn't get angry. She leaned against the car, a smile on her face. Well, we did live together for 17 years. I rolled my eyes. What exactly are you here for? Can't you tell how much is sincere and how much is fake? I acted as if I'd heard a joke. I live right here. You should go home. Rebecca looked completely unfazed. If you don't come with me tonight, the next person to come looking for you will be Victoria. You should know your big sister isn't as easy to deal with as I am. I quickly retorted to Rebecca. She is not my big sister. I looked down at the dog with its soft fur, the German Shepherd wagging its tail at me. I bent down, grabbed its collar, and pushed Rebecca, who was leaning against the car, aside. I ignored her troublemaking and turned to Zoe, my expression softening. Hearing the intimate sis, Zoe put her arm around my shoulder. Let's go home early. Watching the two of them walk away, Rebecca pulled out her phone and made a call. Your brother has another sister now, and he doesn't care about you, she said the moment the call connected. Victoria on the other end was silent for a long moment before replying nonchalantly. Then go and win him back yourself. Rebecca was furious. She looked towards the old apartment complex. This place is so old and small. What's there to be attached to? Is he out of his mind? The Montgomery estate is luxurious enough, but I haven't seen you come back very often either, Victoria said calmly, completely ignoring the anger in her sister's voice. The fact that he's living in a rundown place now, isn't that all thanks to you? If you hadn't been so reckless and orchestrated the Hayes family's bankruptcy, even if he returned to them, he would still be a young master, wearing designer clothes with a private car to take him everywhere. Why else would his whole family be squeezed into a tiny, dilapidated apartment? Rebecca gritted her teeth. Victoria had encouraged her when she was doing the dirty work, but now that it was all out in the open, she was making her take all the blame. That Victoria was becoming more and more sinister. You better keep this attitude. Don't go trying to persuade Ethan to come back later, only for him to ignore you and give me a good laugh. With that, she hung up. Victoria put down her phone, her fingertips tapping a rhythmic beat on the desk. As she pondered, her face was expressionless, her presence exuding the oppressive aura of someone in power. The manager standing before her desk kept his head down, afraid to say a word and provoke his temperamental boss. My sister and I bought our bubble tea and walked home in the evening breeze, my mood unspoiled by Rebecca. Zoe studied my expression for a moment, then said casually, "It seems the second Miss Montgomery is quite concerned about you. You don't need to test me. I have no intention of going with her. Since I've left the Montgomerys, I won't go back. I finally escaped that cage. I'm not stupid enough to jump back into the fire. As for Rebecca caring about me, maybe there was a little bit of it, but I couldn't handle the concern of a lunatic. When I was 5, I was still naive, craving the warmth and protection of family. After being bullied by a classmate at kindergarten, I went to tattle to Rebecca. A normal person would have stood up for their little brother, gone to the school, and taught the bully a lesson. But Rebecca dragged me to taekwondo practice, saying that if my skills were good enough, no one would bully me. Then she taught me herself, showing no mercy to a 5-year-old beginner, and ended up breaking my ribs, landing me in the hospital for 3 months. During those 3 months, only the servants took care of me, and Chloe would come to visit after her classes. The culprit herself never showed her face. When I was discharged from the hospital and saw Rebecca again, she showed no remorse, brazenly calling me too weak and suggesting I learn MMA next time. Who would dare to have a sister like that? Mrs. Hayes's plan for the stall was proceeding smoothly. Mr. Hayes cleaned the cart inside and out, preparing for a trial run the next day. The neighbors nearby were all familiar faces, making it easy for her to gather feedback. After making some improvements, she would officially open for business on Monday near Northwood High. Lily raised her bubble tea. Let's all toast to Mom's booming business. Mr. Hayes remarked with emotion, Ethan is our family's little lucky star. Everything in our lives has been heading in a better direction. When Mason was here, every day was filled with endless complaints, and a gloomy atmosphere hung over the house, like a machine running on a program. After I came back, I helped the family a lot, like a force pushing everyone forward to consider life's possibilities. The full house renovation was also thanks to me. The old, dilapidated traces were covered up, and life took on a new look. Everyone became full of energy, striving in their own ways to make the family's life better, all while being closely connected. I lowered my eyes and smiled. I never expected that my efforts would be rewarded. If one were to say that the lack of warmth in the Montgomery household was due to my not being related by blood, one only had to look at Victoria and Rebecca. Even with Montgomery blood in their veins, they had no real affection for their parents. Mason, the biological son, would probably not be valued much either upon his return. Blood ties couldn't excuse the Montgomerys. The couple themselves were devoid of human feeling. They came together in a loveless marriage alliance and created 3 cold machines. In a family with unhappy parents, the children are destined to be unhappy. That was a lesson Leo taught me. Let's video call our oldest sister. We can't just become a family of 4 and forget about Sarah, Zoe said. Our sister doesn't know about the renovation yet. Let's make her jealous through the screen, Zoe joked, taking out her phone to video call Sarah. The call connected quickly. Sarah had foundation on her face and was just starting her makeup, getting ready to go out. Zoe teased Sarah. Where are you going all dressed up? I've never seen you wear makeup when you come home for breaks. It's so late, don't tell me you're going on a date. Sarah guessed her little sister's intentions. The school's anniversary performance is tomorrow. I'm in a program with my classmates, and we're just doing a makeup trial. Sarah asked, where are you guys? Zoe chuckled, flipped the camera to show the family, and everyone took turns saying hello. Sarah's surprised voice came through the phone. Is that our house? Every time the renovation was mentioned, Mr. Hayes got particularly excited. It just happened a couple of days ago. I have great news for you. You used to be a fan of Samantha, right? She's the one who designed this house. Sarah became unusually excited. Samantha had become famous at 16. Back then, even when the Hayes family had some money, they couldn't afford her. After the bankruptcy, she had given up all hope, even trying not to think about it. She never imagined that her dream would now be quietly fulfilled. I took a sip of my bubble tea, chewing on the pearls thoughtfully. So, Sarah was a fan of Samantha, even idolized her. Why didn't she study interior design then, instead choosing traditional medicine? I took the phone and stood up. Let me show you our room. I first showed Sarah the living room, then went into the bedroom. A series of amazed gasps came from the phone as I gave her a tour of the new place. Sarah's face was almost frozen in a smile. She absolutely loved the design. Samantha's changes had made it so much more spacious, and she adored the light blue style. Sarah had completely turned into a fangirl, exclaiming unconsciously, she's a genius, that designer Samantha. If Samantha heard that, she'd probably be showing off about it for a month. Sarah suddenly frowned. A renovation like this must have cost at least $80,000 or $90,000. Since Samantha was my friend, she probably didn't charge a design fee, but the materials for the furnishings weren't cheap. To me, $20,000 was just the cost of a single meal. There was no need to put so much pressure on my sister. Sarah sighed, and as if I knew what she was about to say, I interrupted. Don't you dare feel guilty. I'll finish up my graduation matters this month and start my internship next month. I'll treat everyone to dinner when I get back. I smiled. Come back soon and try out your custom-designed new home. After a few more pleasantries, we hung up. Sarah was left stunned. She couldn't believe the house had changed so much in just over a week since she'd been back at school. She knew very well that all this good fortune was because of me. Since changing beds, my sleep quality had improved significantly. I glanced at the caller ID, my expression darkening, and rejected the call. The person called back relentlessly. I waved a hand at Zoe to show I was fine, then answered the call with annoyance. What the hell do you want? A discreet, dark green Mercedes was parked outside the complex. Victoria Montgomery looked out the window at Mrs. Hayes. I'm downstairs from your apartment. Either you come down and talk to me, or I invite this lady into my car. Victoria's voice was cold, but it made the hair on my neck stand up. She must have run into Mrs. Hayes coming back from her stall. I grabbed my keys and ran out. I knew Victoria too well. Her methods were vicious and cruel. Mrs. Hayes couldn't handle her. If Mrs. Hayes actually got in her car, there was no telling what that lunatic would say to shock her, and then force me to return to the Montgomerys. I quickly put on my shoes and ran downstairs, just in time to meet Mrs. Hayes. I caught my breath, slowed my pace, and put on my usual smile. You're back from the stall so soon? How was business this morning? Mrs. Hayes was very happy. You'll need to prepare more ingredients for tomorrow's stall. You should go up and rest for a bit. Victoria watched our interaction from a distance. Seeing me stride towards her, she slowly retracted her gaze. The driver immediately started the car and drove off. I reached the entrance and watched the Mercedes drive away, a question mark forming above my head. I pulled out my phone and called Victoria, my tone quite harsh. Didn't you want to talk to me? I come down, and you just leave. Victoria's tone was calm. I suddenly don't feel like talking anymore. We'll have dinner tomorrow night. I'll pick you up. Then she hung up. None of the Montgomerys were normal. After dinner, I changed my clothes, put on my small backpack, and accompanied Zoe to her acting audition. On the bus, I looked at the girl next to me. How long had it been since she'd bought new clothes? The white shirt she was wearing had turned yellow, and the collar was stretched out. She only had 3 or 4 casual outfits, all of them faded from washing. Zoe gave a slightly awkward smile. I don't really care much about clothes. In the prime of her youth, she should be dressing beautifully. Most of the money she earned from her part-time jobs was spent on Mason, leaving her with little for herself. She once felt that working hard and saving money to buy clothes and shoes for her brother was worth it. Now, all she could say was that she didn't regret it. Even though Mason had cruelly ignored her, at least her conscience was clear. She had been open and honest and had never mistreated him. The Hayes family was truly the strangest I had ever met. Did Mason save their lives in a past life or something? For an interview at a big company, you had to dress respectably. If you dressed too casually and ran into someone, you'd feel insecure. When we arrived at our destination, we first went to a brand name store to pick out an outfit. Just as we entered the clothing store, a sharp, sarcastic voice cut in. Isn't this the Montgomery Heir? You used to wear custom couture and now you're in rags. I almost didn't recognize you. Trevor's face flushed with anger. Every time we met, I managed to make him red-faced with rage. The Clark family owned a few factories and were wealthy, but they weren't part of the old money elite. Trevor was jealous of my academic excellence, and our relationship had always been poor. He hated me but was wary of my status. But times had changed. I was just an adopted son of the Montgomerys, now kicked out of the family. I was no longer a Montgomery heir, so what right did I have to be arrogant? Since you know I've left the Montgomerys, you should also know I don't use their name anymore. The real Montgomery heir won't let you off so easily. I gave a humorless smile, ignoring Trevor's venomous glare, and took a modern Cheongsam-style dress from the rack, handing it to Zoe. This really suits your style. Zoe glanced warily at Trevor, but I gave her a look to signal that she didn't need to worry. Trevor snorted coldly and glared at me. You're bankrupt, reeking of poverty. This dress costs thousands. Can you even afford it? You're probably just trying it on for fun. If you get it dirty, what are you going to pay with? My nonchalant tone was insulting. Whether I have money or not is none of your business. Don't stand here and be an eyesore. After years of battling wits with Victoria and Rebecca, my tongue was just as sharp. I used to hold back to protect the Montgomerys' reputation, but now that I no longer carried their name, I would clap back at anyone who provoked me. Trevor huffed angrily. You just wait. After throwing out a threat, Trevor turned and left. Zoe came out after changing, and I looked over, a satisfied smile on my lips. It really did suit her. The film production company wasn't large and seemed to have been established recently. Zoe followed the directions to her audition, and I waited outside, staring at the company logo for a moment. I narrowed my eyes. Why did it look so familiar? The receptionist led me to the waiting area. With Zoe's outfit today, combined with her looks and demeanor, she might just land a good role. After waiting for nearly half an hour, I heard a familiar voice. Why is it you again? I put down my water cup and turned to see Trevor again. Trevor's eyes were filled with mockery. The once adored young master has fallen to auditioning for roles? Well, I'd advise you to just leave. I rested my chin in my hand, looking at him as if enjoying a show. This is my uncle's company. With just one word from me, none of you will even dream of getting a role. I stared blankly, lost in thought. So this company belongs to your uncle? Trevor snorted. Now that you know, why don't you get lost? If you beg me, I might consider giving you a role. Just as he finished speaking, a tall, middle-aged man came out of an office. Trevor ran over to him. Mr. Wallace looked at his nephew with affection. He brought his sister here to audition. Mr. Wallace doted on his nephew as if he were his own son. Hearing that someone was bullying him, he immediately shot an angry glare in my direction, but when his eyes met my smiling, almond-shaped ones, he respectfully asked, "What brings you here, sir?" Such a respectful form of address made Trevor's eyes go wide. Mr. Wallace pushed Trevor aside and walked quickly towards me. "Did you come to see me about something today?" I took a calm sip of water. "I'm just here with my sister for her audition. You own 50% of the company's shares. Getting someone a spot is a simple matter." My gaze fell meaningfully on Trevor. Thanks to young Mr. Clark for the reminder. Otherwise, I would have forgotten I even had shares. As long as I handled the tasks the Montgomerys assigned, I had been learning about investments from Chloe since I was young. I had even forgotten which companies I had invested in. The owners of the companies I had shares in all called me Ethan. "Ethan, which role is your sister auditioning for? I'll have someone cast her immediately." I glanced at Trevor. My sister likes to earn things for herself, not rely on other people's influence. Mr. Wallace understood and shot a glare at his nephew. "Is there some misunderstanding between you and Ethan? Apologize to him now." I smirked. "There's no misunderstanding. He just can't stand me. What's between us is a private matter and shouldn't be mixed with business. It would make me look like I'm using my power to bully him and settle a personal score." Mr. Wallace breathed a sigh of relief. "Ethan is always the bigger person. This nephew of mine has been spoiled rotten. I'll definitely be stricter with him in the future." Trevor gritted his teeth. A dozen or so actors came out from the audition, Zoe among them. I immediately retracted my intimidating aura. Zoe smiled. "I got a role with only a few lines." I said goodbye to Mr. Wallace and left with Zoe. He watched the two of us leave. I bought 2 outfits for everyone in the family as Mid-Autumn Festival gifts. Seeing me spend nearly $10,000 at once, Zoe felt a bit embarrassed. Spending so much money, Mom and Dad will definitely feel too awkward to accept it. A dress for over $1,000 is good quality and will last a long time. Buying a few cheap, non-durable ones is useless. My philosophy on spending is to have good clothes in the wardrobe that are presentable. I spent several thousand on clothes purely to spite Rebecca. Rebecca was furious when she got the news. Ethan had taken Zoe shopping and even bought new clothes for the entire Hayes family. I was his sister for 17 years, and he never bought me a single piece of clothing. Now he goes to the Hayes family and takes that cheap sister of his shopping. I'm going to find him and demand an explanation. Rebecca grabbed her phone and car keys, determined to drag him back today. The manager appeared in a flash, blocking Rebecca's path. He bowed his head slightly. "What good would it do if you went? You were the one who ordered the Hayes family's bankruptcy. The young master is probably still angry with you." Rebecca's steps faltered, her eyes flickering with a hint of regret. She had deliberately caused the bankruptcy back then to prevent me from leaving the Montgomerys. Who would have thought that I, knowing the Hayes family was in ruins, would still leave so decisively? I had absolutely no trust in her. Rebecca didn't have a good reputation in their circle. The young heiress was known for being wild, promiscuous, and not taking anything seriously. Why would she suddenly cause such a huge scene? 2 years ago, Sarah had offended her boyfriend, and Rebecca was there at the time. Seeing that Sarah looked like me, she immediately had someone investigate and discovered that I wasn't her biological brother but the biological son of the Hayes family. I was probably the only thing in that cold house that she found interesting. She didn't want me to leave the Montgomerys, so she orchestrated the Hayes family's bankruptcy, thinking that even if the truth about the switch came out, I wouldn't want to return to my destitute family. But she was also afraid that once the truth was revealed, I wouldn't have a choice and would be forced to return to the Hayes family to suffer. So, after the bankruptcy, she came to me and flaunted, "The Hayes family is broke now. You should just stay obediently with the Montgomerys and continue to be my good little brother. Your big sister will still spoil you." Her intention was to tell me the truth in advance so that before it became public knowledge, I would have time to prepare, use the Montgomerys' resources to make some investments, and save up some money so I wouldn't have too hard a time in the future. She hadn't expected things to be exposed so quickly. In just 2 short years, Mason had shown up. My departure wasn't quite right either. Rather than staying with the Montgomerys as an adopted son, it was better to leave and be independent. The only thing she hadn't anticipated was that I would choose to return to the Hayes family. Rebecca rested her chin in her hands and sighed in frustration, still unsure if her decision back then was right or wrong. Mason had come looking for them on his own. How did he find out he was switched at birth? This question had been bothering me lately as well. During lunch with Chloe on Monday, I discussed it with her. I had known about my birthright for 2 years, so when Mason appeared, I didn't think anything was amiss. But thinking about it carefully these past few days, Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery didn't value me, so it was highly unlikely they would suddenly go looking for their biological son. And the Hayes family had been bankrupt for a long time, so Mason had no way of contacting them. How did he find out about his identity? And where did the paternity test come from? Chloe also found it strange. When I was born, The Montgomerys were already a top-tier wealthy family with their own private hospital and dedicated maternity ward. How could a switch with the Hayes family have happened? It must have been deliberate. Mason showed up with a paternity test. If he was indeed their biological son, where did he get that test? If he wasn't, then the person behind this had very deep motives. I didn't care whose family I belonged to, nor did I care if Mason was the real heir or not. However, if someone was pulling the strings, I had become a pawn in their game. I didn't know their objective yet, nor who their target was. I didn't like the feeling of being manipulated. I'll have someone investigate this privately. You find an opportunity to sound Mason out, Chloe said, pouring me a glass of orange juice. She didn't seem too worried. After all, I was just a baby at the time. Whoever the target was, it certainly wasn't me. It didn't directly affect me, so she naturally wasn't overly concerned. Her words made sense, but the feeling of being watched from the shadows was unsettling. It was definitely best to investigate thoroughly. I trusted Chloe completely. Chloe narrowed her eyes. Is the young master being so polite with me now? After 17 years of knowing each other, we're becoming more and more like strangers. I shot her a glare. Can you be a little less dramatic? Chloe feigned a look of heartbreak. You used to call me Chloe, and now it's Ms. Lockwood. I made a motion to hit her on the back, but she just laughed and didn't dodge. Their research institute has genetic testing equipment. Get a strand of Mason's hair and run a match. I don't have to be sent abroad after graduation, but I'm applying for early graduation here, and I'm managing all the company's affairs. Aren't you going to come and help share the load soon? Chloe laughed in exasperation. I'm not a workhorse, just investing money and not doing any work. What kind of boss are you? When it was time for class, the teacher walked in with the textbook. Mason turned his head to glance at my seat, a slight smirk on his lips and a cunning glint in his eyes. He was picked up by someone at lunch, and class is about to start, but he's still not back. Maybe he has something urgent? Should we just start the class? Hearing Mason's passive-aggressive comments, Leo rolled his eyes. He thought the kid had learned his lesson, but he was still taking every opportunity to throw shade at me. Leo raised his voice. Ethan went to discuss a business deal with Chloe Lockwood. Since he was picked up by Ms. Lockwood, the teacher doesn't need to worry about his safety. The teacher nodded in understanding, opened the textbook, and began the lesson. Mason's face turned pale. What kind of school was this, where they didn't even care if a student skipped class? St. Ambrose was filled with the descendants of powerful families. Although most would go home to inherit their family businesses, many had their own ventures. Missing class for a meeting was something the teachers were long used to. The school was very lenient in this regard, ultimately to give students practical experience, so they wouldn't restrict their development. Skipping a class was fine. As long as you didn't fail the final exam, everything was good. But Mason, being new, naturally didn't understand this. To pull me down from my pedestal, he first had to get rid of Chloe. If he couldn't get rid of her, then joining her wasn't a bad idea either. By the time I got back to school, it was already the third period in the afternoon, which happened to be equestrian class. I went to the changing room, got changed, and then headed to the stables to meet my classmates. You had lunch with Chloe for several hours? I glanced in Mason's direction and said meaningfully, a matter of life and death. A matter concerning bloodlines and status was indeed a matter of life and death. Leo didn't understand the hidden meaning. Did she confess to you? Are you finally official? I shot him an amused glare. She and I were close confidants. Leo pouted. Confidants, my foot. Everyone knows you two have promised yourselves to each other. I rolled my eyes at him. You and Maya are the ones destined for each other. What destiny? I like your sister's type, who still does arranged marriages from childhood in this day and age. Maya and I are just brothers. If we really get married, it'll probably be awkward looking at each other every day. I was both speechless and amused. You're just obsessed with looks. Maya has a gentle personality. If you actually dated her, you'd definitely find her boring. Maya is suitable for me, Leo said defiantly. You're just being protective of your own. He reached out and wrapped his arm around my waist, tickling me until I laughed and begged for mercy. I dodged Leo's attack, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw Maya approaching. Come and get your future husband under control. Leo's ears turned red, and he immediately stopped. Maya's ears also turned red, and she lowered her head and touched her nose. The engagement between the Harrison and Chin families was no secret, but saying it so loudly in public was still quite awkward. A blood-curdling scream shattered the atmosphere. Everyone looked over to see Mason desperately clinging to the reins, his face pale with fear, his features contorted. The equestrian instructor was chasing after him on horseback, looking for an opportunity to rescue him. The instructor shouted as he chased, "Don't pull the reins so tight. Relax your body," trying to teach Mason how to control the horse himself. However, all he could hear was his own screaming. He couldn't relax at all, his palms sweating with nervousness, his heart feeling like it was about to leap out of his chest. I've never seen such a clumsy student, Leo said, stunned, a speechless smile on his face. We have equestrian class twice a week. How does Mason manage to get spooked every single time? Maya shook her head and sighed. How did he even pass the entrance exam with a brain like that? Aren't you going to help him? If he gets thrown off, he'll probably dislocate his arm. It's not my problem, so I'm staying out of it. The instructor is already trying to save him, right? What does it have to do with me? Just then, the instructor's voice came from a distance. Ethan, quick, help. Leo and Maya laughed with schadenfreude. I sighed helplessly, swung myself onto a horse, and chased after them. Sometimes, being an excellent student wasn't a good thing. I pulled Mason in front of me on my horse and brought him back to safety. The instructor leaped onto the runaway horse and brought it under control. Mason had fainted and was carried away by the school nurse. I patted the horse I had raised since it was a foal, as if praising it for a job well done. Leo walked over and clapped me on the shoulder. Feeling charitable enough to save that young master? Maya scoffed and said nonchalantly, Ethan doesn't have a heart. That's just him navigating the social jungle. I shot them a mock annoyed glare. You two are ganging up on me, calling me heartless? Leo gave a fake laugh. Maya said calmly, who told you to get first place in last year's exams and show off your skills on the field? Otherwise, they wouldn't have called you out by name today. Being too strong is also a mistake. If I hadn't pulled out all the stops, I might not have gotten first place, and maybe I wouldn't even be able to stay at St. Ambrose. Leo and Maya stopped joking. There was indeed a formidable person in their grade, Isabella from Class 1, my strongest competitor at school. Our scores were always close, and I only ever won by a few points in each exam. Last semester's equestrian exam, Isabella got a shockingly high score. If I hadn't seen the situation and increased the difficulty of my routine, ultimately winning the final overall grade by a single point, I might not have been able to study at St. Ambrose this year. This Isabella is pretty and popular in our grade, but I always get a creepy vibe from her. Leo shivered as he recalled Isabella's smile. It wasn't an overtly sinister expression. She would smile as warmly as a spring breeze, but her eyes were strange. You always felt she was hiding some ill intent, which sent a chill down your spine. Especially the way she looks at me. She's smiling, but it's hidden very deep. The hostility is there, but it's faint, making it impossible to figure out what she's thinking. Maya nodded in agreement. I've dealt with Isabella twice and found her to be a smiling tiger. She rarely says anything truthful and exudes a cold, sinister aura from within. I was lost in thought. I had never met Isabella face to face, only competed with her on the academic rankings, and I had never looked into her background. In New York's high society, I had never heard of a prominent family with her surname. Maya, however, had some information. I heard she's not from New York. She lives with her aunt. Her aunt is from the Chicago elite circle, but I don't know her specific name, and no one can find out. She's also considered a wealthy heiress. Leo was full of questions. So she's from Chicago? Why come all the way to New York to study? Maya shrugged. Is it that rare for elite schools to have out-of-state students? Our school has students from other states too. Maybe they were just after St. Ambrose's education and were sent here specifically. This Isabella was strange, but ultimately, it had nothing to do with me. I didn't even know her, so she couldn't be targeting me. I stopped dwelling on it and decided not to worry about it for now. I swung myself back onto my horse and rode freely across the field. After practicing for a while, I went to change for the next class. As I came out of the changing room, I ran right into the creepy Isabella my friends had been talking about. Isabella's thin lips curved into a smile, her eyes shining, but there was no warmth in them, as if she held no hostility. Are you here to change, Miss Vance? Or were you waiting for me specifically? Isabella smiled candidly. There have been a lot of rumors in our grade lately. A student as quick-witted as you, Ethan, shouldn't give up your future for a moment of pride. I narrowed my eyes almost imperceptibly, then quickly returned to normal. Since you also know they're just rumors, why bother telling me this nonsense? What was the real reason you left the Montgomerys? I detected a hint of danger in her eyes. I looked back calmly. If I said it was to find my real family, would you believe me? I raised an eyebrow slightly. Then why do you bother asking? I didn't waste any more words on her and walked past, brushing her shoulder. Isabella's eyes faltered, the smile vanishing from her face, replaced by an unconcealed, cold glint in her eyes. I returned to the classroom, sat down, and took a sip of water, replaying the conversation in my mind. Leo and Maya were right. There were no flaws in Isabella's words, and she smiled, but her eyes were vicious, revealing a faint, almost imperceptible hostility. Mysterious and dangerous, she was impossible to read. Logically, the other wealthy kids weren't blind. If Isabella's strange behavior was so obvious, it's unlikely so many people would still admire her. The only possibility was that she was very good at hiding it, but for some reason, she couldn't hide it from me, and by extension, she was wary of those around me. She was hostile towards me, but I didn't quite understand. Today was the first time we had met face to face. We had never crossed paths before. I was from the New York circle and she was from Chicago. We were worlds apart and had never met outside of school. Was it just because my grades had made her second best for 2 years? She seemed very interested in why I left the Montgomerys. Someone from the Chicago elite being so concerned with New York high society gossip was rather bizarre. Could she have a grudge against the Montgomerys? But if she had a grudge against them, why come to me? So I decided to stop thinking about it. What I needed to know, I would find out sooner or later. Leo plopped down on my desk. Want to go to my winery for a drink tonight? I patted his hand, straightened the books on my desk, and frowned. Could you please be a little more mindful of your image? I glared at him, but he still reached out and tugged at my shirt. My winery has been open for so long, and you've never come to visit. Maya rolled her eyes. You have that much confidence in yourself? You know the winery is bound to fail. Leo scoffed and slapped Maya on the arm. What are you butting in for? You were supposed to get me a batch of new wine, and it ended up ruined. I still need to settle that score with you, right? Maya leaned against another desk, facing Leo. To avoid getting caught for cutting corners on inspections, the deal suddenly fell through. It's not like I intentionally didn't give it to you. When I find some good wine next time, I'll make it up to you, okay? Listening to them bicker, Leo got so worked up he even threatened to fight her and rip her jacket off in public. Maya was embarrassed, and the two of them ended up wrestling playfully, filling the classroom with laughter. I lowered my head and covered my mouth to hide my laughter. This pair of frenemies had been fighting since they were kids. No wonder Leo only saw her as a good buddy. Seeing me laughing, Leo poked my arm. Don't just watch the show. You haven't answered me yet. I'll have some 82 grape juice ready for you. Wasn't 82 grape juice just wine? How could he dare let me drink? Wasn't he afraid of Chloe's wrath? Everyone knew I was the person she cherished most. If anything was even slightly harmful to me, she would have to eliminate it to be at ease. If Leo dared to give me alcohol, he would be the next one to be dealt with. I said calmly, you two can stop fighting. I'm not going tonight. Victoria Montgomery asked me to dinner. Leo immediately jumped off the desk as if he had heard the sky was falling, his voice rising in pitch. What is the eldest Miss Montgomery getting involved in now? She's not planning to kidnap you, is she? Maya patted my shoulder with a determined look. Her expression is tragic, as if she were sending me off to war. My family has a piece of soft body armor. I'll have someone bring it for you to wear tonight. It was no wonder Leo and Maya were acting like it was a major crisis. They knew I didn't get along with the two Montgomery sisters. Having known me for over a decade, they were well aware of their temperaments. Rebecca used to have a large dog. At 17, unhappy with Victoria's meddling, she sicked the dog on 19-year-old Victoria. Victoria, without a word, had the dog taken care of. The incident threw the Montgomery household into chaos. When Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery questioned them, Rebecca denied giving the order, and Victoria directly blamed me. My parents knew it couldn't have been me, but they still punished me by making me face the wall in my room, grounding me for a month. To get revenge on Victoria, Rebecca snuck into the company where Victoria was interning and shut off the main power. The power outage caused the loss of important data, resulting in over $1 million in damages. Victoria, without a word, turned around and smashed Rebecca's favorite car. At that time, both sisters were heavily at fault, but Rebecca falsely accused me of pulling the switch. Again, my parents knew the truth but condoned their antics, sending me, who had just been ungrounded, back into confinement for another month. From that moment on, I understood that I was just a pawn for a marriage alliance. No matter how well-behaved or obedient I was, they would never see it, and I would never get a single word of praise. Instead, I was unfairly blamed for many things. I was always the one to take the blame for the mistakes my two sisters made, because I was never valued at all. Through these two incidents, I also saw my two sisters' true natures. Victoria, the cold and ruthless one, and Rebecca, the wild and unrestrained one. If I wanted to grow up in peace, I had to fight them. After my friends learned of these events, they remarked more than once that it was a miracle I had survived this long under their thumb. You're having dinner alone with Victoria? Maybe you should call the police in advance? Or bring a self-defense baton. Her temper is so unpredictable. I'm really worried that if you say the wrong thing, she'll just get physical and teach you a lesson. Leo's heart was filled with worry. I shot him an annoyed glare. Why don't you come with me then? Didn't you promise Chloe you'd be my bodyguard? Leo sucked in a sharp breath. I can't beat Victoria in a fight. Everyone knows she went ballistic at that banquet, taught the troublemakers a lesson on the spot, and that's why her father sent her abroad. You two can relax. She won't go so far as to physically harm me. Although I disliked these two sisters, I knew deep down that I wouldn't be hurt. Leo pulled up a chair and sat beside me. You can't be sure about that. When you're in real danger, they both protect you. When you're not, they are the danger. The groundings were nothing. Have you forgotten she's the reason you were recovering from that injury for half a year? I rubbed my nose, momentarily at a loss for words. That incident, well, it wasn't really Victoria's fault. When I was 13, she took me out, and we were ambushed by men from a rival family. She didn't have bodyguards with her and was outnumbered. While she was protecting me, I was hit on the leg with a wooden club. Luckily, thanks to my regular training, I managed to dodge slightly, and I recovered completely after 6 months. During that half year, Chloe personally drove me everywhere. I later heard from Chloe that Victoria took care of every single one of the ambushers, and her methods were ruthless. She had avenged me in her own way, but the thought of it still gives me the creeps, which is why I still don't like her. She's expressionless and impossible to read, filled with a hostile energy, and her methods are vicious. I smiled to reassure them. I've been fighting with them for 17 years. I'll be fine. Leo sighed and ran a hand through his short hair. Chloe is also in New York. If anything happens, call for backup immediately. We'll rush over and call the police. As evening approached, school let out. I packed my bag and took a deep breath. I really didn't want to deal with Victoria, but I didn't have a choice. I could avoid her today, but there would always be a tomorrow. I couldn't hide from her forever. When I reached the school gate, I saw the familiar dark green Mercedes. To my surprise, Victoria actually did the unthinkable and got out of the car to greet me. The great Miss Montgomery coming to pick me up personally? I'm truly overwhelmed by this honor, I said with a sarcastic smirk, my words dripping with irony. Where's that cheap sister of yours? She asked, looking around, not seeing anyone in a Northwood High uniform waiting. She had her people check. Zoe picked me up from school every day. She didn't come today. I adjusted my backpack. Didn't you ask me to dinner? I told her to go home first. Victoria's eyes darkened, a dangerous glint appearing. You're very protective of her? I met her gaze with a humorless smile and said, enunciating each word, I'm very wary of you. The two of us locked eyes in a silent battle, neither willing to back down. Leo and Maya, watching from a distance, felt that war was about to break out. They probably wouldn't even make it to the restaurant before a fight started. The tension was that thick. I only saw Victoria's lips move. She said just a couple of sentences and it's already like this. I think it would be safer if we followed them. Before they could figure out a way to help, the party crasher appeared. Mason, dressed in his school uniform, came running over, the hem of his jacket fluttering in the wind. He looked youthful and vibrant, his smile sunny and charming. Although he had greeted his two sisters at the banquet, he hadn't seen them in the 2 days since. But he was their biological brother, after all. The fact that Victoria had come to pick him up must mean she wanted to improve their relationship. Besides, seeing the unpleasant atmosphere between us, she clearly didn't like me, the fake heir. Mason put on a cute, wheedling voice, thinking it would please her. Big sister, are you here to pick me up? I'm your real little brother. You have to protect me from now on. He had absolutely no idea what kind of people the two Montgomery sisters were. I snorted and rolled my eyes, feeling it was unfair to Zoe. He was acting as if Zoe had wronged him back when he was with the Hayes family. Rest assured, you'll get what's coming to you in the future. Mason shot me a triumphant glare, then turned back to Victoria, putting on a thoughtful and obedient act. Even though he stole my life for 17 years, I don't blame him, so you shouldn't be too hard on him either. Since you two still have things to talk about, I'll just get in the car first. He went to pull open the rear door but found it wouldn't budge. He knocked on the driver's window, but the driver didn't even glance at him. Mason turned to Victoria with a wronged expression. The driver won't open the door for me. Couldn't help but laugh out loud. Your dear brother is waiting for you. I won't keep you. I plan to make a run for it. Mason froze, looking from me to Victoria, unable to believe she was here to pick me up. It was after school, so the gate was already crowded, and now even more people were gathering to watch the spectacle. They weren't about to miss such a great opportunity. Being watched by a crowd, Mason couldn't afford to lose face. He forced a smile and said, "Oh, so big sister invited him to dinner too. Well then, let's get going. Mom and Dad would be so happy to know we're getting along well." He was using their parents' name to pressure Victoria. If she didn't play along, it would be the Montgomery family's reputation on the line, and their parents would surely reprimand her. Victoria had no affection for her parents, so she naturally wasn't afraid of being blamed. She ignored Mason's clumsy ploy, not sparing him a single glance. I stood my ground, meeting her gaze without flinching. Victoria narrowed her eyes. "Haven't seen you in a few years. You've really grown some guts." "You flatter me, Miss Montgomery. How could I dare get in this car? I'll just stay out here and we can waste time together. Do I need to invite you to get in?" I wasn't about to back down either. Let's see what she would try to pull. In the Montgomery family, it wasn't just me who was at odds with them. The two sisters were also mortal enemies, fighting since childhood, tripping each other up and then passing the blame. Later on, I learned to use Rebecca to restrain Victoria, and Victoria to control Rebecca, playing them off each other. Victoria gritted her teeth and let out a quiet, helpless sigh. "Get in the car." Another round one. I smiled and finally agreed to get in. I walked to the rear door, and the driver tactfully unlocked it immediately. I pulled the door open, ducked my head, and sat down inside. He finally deigned to get in the car. Only then did she cast a cold glance at Mason. "Every stray cat and dog wants to climb up. Unpresentable trash will only dirty my car." She wasn't talking about anyone else. She was clearly disgusted by a brother like Mason, feeling he cheapened her status. Victoria walked around to the other side and got in. I rolled down the window, chuckled, and said, "You should practice your equestrian skills. If something like today happens again, I won't save you." An ungrateful wolf is worse than a dog, isn't it? The window rolled up, and the car sped away. Mason was so angry he was practically jumping up and down. He couldn't believe his sister had shown him no face at all, taking me and leaving him there. He was the real Montgomery son. Why was I, who no longer even carried the family name, still getting so much attention and even being protected by Victoria? Why was I always haunting him? The onlookers saw everything clearly. Even though he was the true heir, he wasn't valued by his own sister. In Victoria's eyes, Mason wasn't worth a millionth of me. Whatever Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery's attitude was, the family fortune would ultimately be inherited by Victoria. Without her approval, his title of young master was practically meaningless. My mother turned to look at Zoe, who had come to help after school. "Ethan will be fine," I said, knowing she was worried. Zoe frowned. "Mom, trust him. He promised us he wouldn't go back to the Montgomerys to be mistreated again." Leo ran over excitedly. "Hello, ma'am." His eyes were glued to Zoe's face. How could someone be so beautiful? She was like a goddess from heaven, too ethereal for the mortal world. Maya pressed her lips together, her eyes full of resentment. She stepped to the side, blocking Leo's view. "Ma'am, we're Ethan's friends. He told us you were running a small business here, so we came to join the fun." Mrs. Hayes smiled warmly. "Hello. Since you're Ethan's friends, let me make you a deluxe rice ball to try." She made a rice ball with extra fillings, cut it in half and gave it to them. "Here, try it and tell me if it's good." Maya accepted it graciously. Leo also ate with great relish, taking a large bite of the rice ball. "Did you make these fillings yourself? They're delicious. I'd love to come over for a meal at your place sometime." He ate without any pretense, his enjoyment making the food look even more appetizing. Mrs. Hayes smiled so widely her eyes were just slits. "Whenever you want to come, just let me know in advance. I'll make a few extra dishes." "You're welcome anytime." Her son had so many good friends at school, and they were all such kind kids. It meant her son was well liked. How could a mother not be happy? Of course, she felt relieved. With these two live wires drawing a crowd, a few other classmates couldn't help but wander over. They soon realized the woman was my biological mother and all bought something to support her business. A crowded stall attracts more customers, and soon it became very busy. Zoe also pitched in to help, while Leo watched her the entire time, a completely smitten look on his face. Maya rolled her eyes. It was one thing to rank below me in her brother's heart, and another to be outshone by Chloe, but now even Zoe was above her. Her status was in jeopardy. She couldn't guarantee that one day he wouldn't just ditch his friends for a pretty face, leaving her as just his childhood buddy. She had to think of a plan. Maya subtly shifted her position, blocking the boy's line of sight to Zoe. "Want to go see a movie this weekend?" As her intense gaze followed Zoe, it met Leo's starstruck eyes. "You're really beautiful," he blurted out. At Northwood High, she was secretly considered the most beautiful girl in school, and she often got stared at when she was out shopping. She was used to being looked at like that, but when the person was her brother's good friend, she felt a little shy. "Thank you. You two seem to have a very good relationship." Leo threw an arm around Maya's shoulder grandly. "If we couldn't get married, I'd definitely carry him home in a grand sedan chair and marry him." Maya facepalmed, mortified. Saying something like that in front of the guy's sister, wasn't he afraid of being misunderstood? After knowing him for over a decade, she really thought he was clueless sometimes. No wonder he had no other close friends besides me. Zoe, on the other hand, found his personality straightforward and refreshing. "You still haven't answered my question. Are you going this weekend or not?" Leo excitedly asked back, "Do you want to come with us?" If he could get Zoe to come along, he could spend more time looking at the beautiful girl. But Zoe shook her head. "I have my part-time job on the weekend. You guys go ahead." Leo was instantly deflated. What's the young master so busy with? For the first 2 weeks after returning to the Hayes family, I had to visit the hospital on weekends. This week, Chloe was also back, so I probably had to make a trip. Zoe didn't know the specifics of what I was busy with, but after spending this time together, she understood that I was already well established. Even without the Montgomery name, I still had many unknown business interests. I was not an ordinary high school student, and besides, it was my private business, so she didn't ask further. "Well, you're welcome to come over to our house anytime you're free." After selling out of rice balls, they packed up the stall. Mr. Hayes came to pick them up. Maya even helped load the cart onto the truck. The Chun family's car had been waiting by the roadside for a long time. She then dragged Leo into the car, planning to take him to her place to help organize some things. Maya sighed helplessly. Like Chloe, she was a go-to person for her childhood friend, but it also felt different. Night fell, and the car window reflected my listless expression. This restaurant again. Perhaps because I had so few memories at the Montgomery estate, and we came here often. Victoria had bought the place and always brought me here to eat afterward. But human enthusiasm has its limits. Come too many times, and you get tired of it, just as I eventually grew tired of the coldness of the Montgomerys. I asked directly, "Going to all this trouble to drag me out to dinner, what do you really want?" Yesterday she came looking for me only to drive off, and today she specifically asked me to dinner. This probably wasn't something that could be settled in just a few words. Victoria picked up her wine glass and took a sip of red wine. Are they treating you well? All this effort just to ask me that? This felt just like my life as a Montgomery. Victoria's expression was complex. She put down her wine glass impassively, neither confirming nor denying my response. She had long known about my plan to escape the Montgomerys after I came of age. She had even secretly provided investment opportunities these past 2 years so I could build up some assets to protect myself. But she never expected me to return to the Hayes family, to live with those worthless people. With the businesses I currently owned, a little effort in managing them would be enough for me to live comfortably for the rest of my life. Yet here I was, meddling in the Hayes family's affairs, wasting time and resources. I looked out at the night scenery, but my heart felt an unprecedented sense of peace. And that was enough.